Almost 5,000 years ago, humanity was brought to its knees by Arabos, a being known as the genesis of evil. To rid the world of this darkness, 4 great heroes united, but in the end, all of them perished in battle, leaving only one man standing named Kail, the last hero, who represented the human side thanks to the sacrifices of his friends. Kail defeated the incarnation of evil and saved humanity, but that happened 5,000 years ago. Now, in the present day, we see a different version, one in which Kail has been completely erased from the record. Everyone is taught that it was the sacrifice of Linus that led to the defeat of Arabos, the genesis of evil. This has gone unquestioned until now. The real twist comes when Kail, reincarnated in this era, learns of the account of Arabos' defeat and realizes his name is nowhere to be found. We will follow the story of the reincarnated Kail, who after discovering his absence from history, enrolls in Lumen Academy, the Academy for Heroes that houses the Registry of Heroes, determined to reclaim his place in the world. Years have passed since the reincarnation of the hero Kail, and now the scene unfolds at the Royal School of Delon, inside a classroom. The teacher stands before the students, reminding them of the current era they are living in, known as the Age of Heroes. 5,000 years have passed since the Registry of Heroes first appeared in the world, and the lower world has undergone many changes in that time. For example, the Royal School of Delon has been chosen to host this year's Lumen entrance exam. The teacher is filled with excitement, confident that among the students, some have the potential to become heroes. He believes some will pass the entrance exam and one day see their names written in the Registry of Heroes. Because of this, he urges everyone to pay attention during the lesson. However, not everyone shares the teacher's enthusiasm. One particular student, sitting in the back row, seems completely uninterested and is instead taking a nap. This student, of course, is Leo. The teacher is frustrated by his lack of attention. He reasons that if Leo isn't paying attention, it must mean he already knows the material and sees no need for instruction. To challenge him, the teacher asks him to explain the ritual from 5,000 years ago that one had to perform to earn the title of hero. Leo finally gets up from his seat and answers the teacher's question as casually as possible, simply saying that if someone made a name for themselves, people would start to worship them on their own. By the way, our protagonist's full name is Leo Plab, a 15-year-old from the prestigious House of Plab. Needless to say, the teacher is clearly disappointed by Leo's half-hearted answer, so he turns to the class and asks if anyone else would like to offer a more detailed answer. A brighter student enthusiastically raises his hand and offers an explanation. This student explains that in ancient times, there was no direct way to gain recognition from the gods. Instead, only sacred rituals were used to choose those who would be considered heroes. A prime example of such a ritual is the blood ritual. The teacher is completely impressed by the depth of the answer and is sure that this student, named Wollivan, will become the kingdom's greatest magical genius. Gillivan comes from House Tratton. In any case, it seems Leo is getting pretty tired of the same nonsense he faces every day. From his perspective, meeting the gods was nothing special back in his day, since it was simply a part of life after all. The gods once gifted the lower world a miracle to celebrate the great heroes who fought against Arabos, the hero's record. But for some reason, Leo doesn't understand why he's the only one who has been completely erased from history. 1, nobody seems to recognize his role, and this is starting to affect him. 2, later, the students gather around the windows. 3, everyone is eager to see the Singer clan as they march down the hall. At the front of the group is a lady, Celia Singer, a woman who piques everyone's interest and curiosity. An announcement plays asking all students to gather in the auditorium for a mandatory assembly, as the Singer clan is visiting the school. As Leo starts to leave the classroom, Wu Jian calls out to him, asking if Leo plans to try and get the Singer's attention. But Leo, uninterested, just shrugs his shoulders. He has no desire to get involved in whatever spectacle this is, he just wants to go home. This indifference only fires up Gillivan, who can't believe how casually Leo is passing up such an opportunity just to look cool. Gillivan explains that he doesn't care much about the Singer clan either, but he's definitely going to see Celia, especially since he considers her a rival. Later, we find Leo in the dojo, visibly exhausted after tirelessly swinging his practice stick. Finally, he grabs his sword and heads for the exit. Leo, just as he's leaving, is ambushed by a woman who attacks him with the force of a runaway train. Leo, though surprised, manages to block her strike with his sword. It's clear from their interaction that this isn't the first time these two have crossed swords. They have a shared history, one where such exchanges are not unusual at all. The lady is eager to fight him after so long and declares that this match will be his final test before she grants him permission to attend Lumen Academy. It turns out this formidable woman is none other than his mother. In an instant, she attacks him again, and their swords clash once more as Leo already struggles to keep up. His mother calmly comments that she hasn't even used a fraction of her full strength. Blow after blow, the fight continues, each strike more intense than the last. However, eventually Leo turns the tables. 1. His pure skill and mastery with the sword allow him to overpower his mother, forcing her to surrender. 2. The woman is astonished by her son's talent and growth. 3. She gets up and with a softer tone asks him why he is so determined to attend Lumen Academy. 4. Before the story moves on, a bit of context about the academy is needed. Lumen Academy, the Academy for Human Heroes. It is one of the 4 prestigious institutions among the races that house the hero's record. Leo strongly suspects that Lumen Academy is the most likely place to uncover traces of his past life as the hero Kail. With such a compelling reason, it's no wonder Leo is determined to join the academy. Leo's mother reminds him that the members of the Singer clan are currently visiting Delon and will be staying at the Platt mansion. Although she's personally not thrilled about having them in her home, she has a request to make. She intends to speak with Sei, the vice patriarch of the Singer clan, hoping he'll be willing to teach Leo the Laura Singer technique. She believes that with that technique, Leo will become strong enough to be admitted to the Lumen Academy next year. However, what she doesn't know is that her son is determined to be admitted this year. He has no patience to wait another whole year to achieve his goals. Sometime later, we find ourselves at the Plab mansion, where Celia Singer is being escorted inside. As soon as she steps out of the carriage, she can't help but wonder why her uncle chose to stay in a place like this, when he could have easily rented an entire hotel for himself. As we already know, she is Celia Singer, 15 years old, a sword princess from the Singer clan. Her main focus is the entrance exam for Lumen, and she's skeptical about how a small family like the Plabs could help her prepare for it. At that moment, Celia's uncle calls out to her. He is none other than Sei Singer, the vice patriarch of the Singer clan, and asks her in a teasing tone if she isn't at least a little curious to meet Leo, the same boy who boldly declared he wasn't interested in the Singer clan. Celia remains indifferent and comments that if Leo is just an aspiring knight who can't even use aura yet. In her opinion, he's probably not that impressive. However, Sei doesn't share her sentiment. On the contrary, he seems quite optimistic about Leo's potential. Once they enter the mansion, Sei steps forward to greet the heads of the Plab house, exchanging respectful words with Dave of Plab, the patriarch, and Raina Plab, his wife. Both hosts kindly return the gesture, welcoming the Singers into their home with equal honor. Then, Sei formally introduces Celia to Raina and Dave. The young lady promptly reciprocates their hospitality with a courteous introduction. Sei expresses his gratitude for being welcomed into their home. Raina steps forward and takes a moment to observe Celia. She notes that Celia looks a lot like her father and her uncle, both in appearance and demeanor. Celia, in turn, notices Raina's striking black hair and red eyes. It doesn't take her long to realize that Raina is part of the Deserting clan, which also makes her Celia's aunt. Later, Sei and Raina, who share the bond of being siblings, sit down and start to catch up. During their conversation, Sei mentions his recent visit to the Royal School of Delon, where they had hoped to catch a glimpse of Leo. However, they were disappointed to find that he had already left the school, as he wasn't interested in meeting anyone. Raina apologizes on her son's behalf, acknowledging that his behavior might have seemed disrespectful. Sei then curiously asks his sister what kind of person Leo is. Raina speaks very highly of him, stating that Leo is incredibly talented. Her answer leads Sei to question if Leo is truly worthy of inheriting the flames of deserting. Raina's praise for her son continues, but she makes it clear that she's not just speaking as a proud mother, but that Leo truly has the talent and potential to be worthy. From the legacy of Deserting 6, is quite intrigued to hear this, although he trusts his judgment. He feels the need to test Leo for himself before forming a final opinion. Later, we find Leo sitting quietly, trying to concentrate. After finishing his little ritual, he tells himself that he has finally achieved a vessel capable of holding everything he needs. Leo reflects on why he hadn't learned aura until now. The truth lies in the unique nature of his body. Accepting aura too early would have caused it to naturally adapt and specialize in aligning with aura, which would limit his ability to accumulate mana and soul energy, two essential components of his long-term plan. In his past life, he had witnessed the danger of uncontrolled power. If he had fully harnessed the abilities and essence of his fallen comrades, he wouldn't have left a seed of disaster behind. To avoid repeating history, Leo is determined to achieve perfect control in this life, so the first step on his journey is to master aura. But he intends to do it on his own terms. Before he can delve deeper into his thoughts, a familiar voice calls out to him, diverting his attention. Turning around, he sees Celia Singer with a confident smile. She comments on how he finally seems to have grasped the basics of training, and although her words have a hint of sarcasm, she goes on to offer him guidance in swordsmanship if he's up for the challenge. Meanwhile, our boy has no idea who the heck she is, so she introduces herself as Celia Singer, the world-class sword princess. With the introductions out of the way, Leo gets straight to the point. Although he feels quite honored that she thought of him, he has no intention of receiving any guidance from someone he considers less skilled than himself. Needless to say, the girl gets annoyed hearing this, as his comment gives the impression that he's suggesting he is stronger than her, to which Leo clarifies that in a death match, she is probably stronger since he can't use aura yet. However, fighting with only swordsmanship is a completely different ballgame, and he's confident he can handle her without any trouble. Celia feels challenged by his statement, so she looks around and grabs one of the many available swords. She wants to prove that what he has is just misplaced confidence and plans to do so by defeating him in a duel. In her mind, even if Leo learns aura, there's no way he can defeat her. She just wants to teach him a harsh lesson about reality. She then states that if she wins, during her 1-week stay here, he will become her servant. Leo is completely unfazed by the terms she threw at him and, in response, asks what would happen if he wins to make it fairer. She replies that if he wins, she will be his servant instead. Now that the rules are clear, Leo grabs a practice sword and rushes into combat. He tries to strike her with his surprising speed, but she easily dodges him. However, she can't help but notice that his speed is actually worryingly good. Nevertheless, Celia is certain that it won't be enough for him to win. As they both lunge at each other again, Leo lands a brutally strong hit, and the force behind it overwhelms her. She quickly backs away as the force becomes too much to handle. When Leo's sword hits the ground, it shatters instantly, but he doesn't stop there. He charges at her once again. The previously arrogant lady is now starting to regret challenging Leo and is certain she can't block the incoming blow. So she braces herself and takes the impact head-on. But to everyone's surprise, she was completely unharmed. Because she had used an aura armor in the final moments, even though this wasn't part of the training, since this sparring match was supposed to be only about swordsmanship, this arrogant piece of work won't admit she couldn't dodge his attack. Instead, she makes an excuse saying it was just a reflex, but Leo declares that he's already won, and it doesn't matter. Of course, this leaves Celia in disbelief. As she's not willing to hand him the victory so easily, Leo had anticipated this. So he takes off the magic bracelets he used to restrain his physical strength. On the next strike, he literally destroys her barrier, leaving the girl completely shocked. Meanwhile, Leo shows no mercy and gives her a taste of his full strength. Later, in the courtyard, while Leo is taking a walk, he runs into his mother, who immediately introduces him to his uncle, Seiss. Leo quickly bows his head to pay his respects. Seiss returns the gesture, introducing himself as well, and the two gentlemen shake hands. Then his mother asks if he has met Celia, to which Leo remembers how she fainted after their battle due to fear. Before Leo can explain what happened, a knight approaches Seiss with a report about the lady. Seiss is fascinated to learn that Leo defeated Celia with a body that hasn't even learned aura yet. Seiss personally expresses his admiration for Leo. saying that it's nothing short of impressive, but Leo claims she just underestimated him. Sais then asks what Celia lost in the bet, to which Leo happily replies that the loser had to become the winner's servant. So basically, Celia is his servant for the next week. As much as Sais dislikes this idea, he understands the importance of keeping one's word. However, he makes it clear that Celia is from the house of Singer. So he can't order her to do servant's work. He hopes Leo will withdraw the promise, and in exchange, he offers him to personally reward him with something much more valuable, but Leo rejects the offer immediately and tells his uncle that this was a bet between him and Celia. And as long as she holds the Singer name, she must take responsibility. The uncle then asks him if he's also willing to pass up the opportunity to learn the Singer aura breathing method. Leo again responds with a sarcastic answer, believing that an aura breathing method given just to prevent a niece from being humiliated has no value to learn. Since Sai sees no other way out of this situation, he decides to get a little offensive. He asks the boy directly, reminding him that he just declared he would use the direct bloodline of the Singers as a servant, and that the Singer breathing method is useless. Leo remains calm and indifferent to the consequences surrounding him, simply stating that what his uncle just said is indeed true. Suddenly, the uncle's mood changes, and he gently asks the boy if he doesn't think what he just declared is rude and disrespectful. Leo once again makes it clear that he had no intention of insulting the Singers, and claims that if they had given him the aura breathing technique as a reward for defeating Celia, he would have gladly accepted it. However, he has no intention of accepting it as a bribe just so she can escape the consequences of her defeat. You see, if her uncle does not want to acknowledge Celia's defeat, it means they believe she is better than him, and simply lost the duel due to a mistake. But Leo makes it clear that even if Celia had fought seriously against him, he would have still won. This makes Leo's mother even prouder, and his brother is also fascinated to hear such a judgment from Leo. The fact that this boy rejected the offer just because he didn't like his uncle's behavior highlights how exceptional he is. He wishes a boy like him were a Singer. Then, he gestures to his knights and orders them to send Celia to the maid's quarters, then turns to Leo and grants him the right to address his uncle without honorific titles. After that brief conversation, Leo says goodbye and turns to his older sister, proudly telling her that once he returns home, he will make sure to convince his older brother to teach Leo the powerful Phoenix Breath technique. Later, the scene shifts to Leo's room. The first thing we notice is Celia's completely embarrassed face. She is completely overwhelmed with embarrassment as she introduces herself as Celia, the maid who will be in charge of Leo for the next week. Leo is literally enjoying the situation a lot when she calls him that way. Who would have imagined that her usual elegant style would also look good in simple maid clothing, and that dress just looks like fire? Celia seems annoyed by the way he praises her, as she knows very well how beautiful she is. Leo apologizes, as he did not mean to offend her with his words, but admits that he had a friend who excessively praised beauty, and that habit probably stuck with him. He remembers how that friend used to say that the beauty of eternity is incomparable, and that if peace returned to this world, he would spend the rest of his life spreading beauty to everyone. The friend they are talking about is none other than the dwarf blacksmith known as Master. Suddenly, Celia's eyes fixate on the book Leo is reading, and, curious, she asks about it. Leo explains that he used to read it a lot when he was younger. It is the book known as The Great Hero of the Beginning. Celia remembers how she used to read that book when she was just 5 years old. Seeing how much he likes this particular book, she approaches the shelf and takes out another, mentioning that there are many books about Kail. In response, Leo states that many of the great achievements in history are hard to attribute to a single hero. He believes that many of these achievements attributed to a single hero are actually the result of the collective actions of several heroes over time. In summary, he is trying to convey that Kail's achievements have also been attributed to other heroes, but Celia dismisses such thoughts, claiming that Kail was probably a fraud who tried to take credit for the achievements of great heroes, at least that's what most people think, and of course, she is one of them. Naturally, Leo does not like hearing that everyone considers Kail a fraud with no contribution to the world, so he steers the whole conversation away from Kail and decides it is time for breakfast before starting his training. Celia quickly assumes her role and, like any maid, she humbly asks her young master if she could train with him. Outwardly, she is kind and polite, but on the inside, the girl has many toxic thoughts towards him. Still, she has to play along because she wants to discover the secret behind his strength. Leo starts walking towards the training hall to fulfill her request. A while later, we see an exhausted Celia on her knees and breathing heavily. After this first round, Leo gives her his feedback. During the fight, when her stamina reaches its limit, her reaction speed decreases and more gaps appear between her movements. When that happens, she leaves herself open, and the same thing is happening to her now. But Celia isn't sure that pushing her body like this is actually useful for training. Leo responds positively because he believes that young people nowadays are too weak. You see, compared to the past, aura techniques have developed considerably, and that must be why people stopped caring so much about physical training. Aura allows you to enhance your body's strength, and if you train your body, the aura is also enhanced. The girl simply doesn't want to be labeled as weak, so she gathers her strength and gets up for another round. Before lunging, she warns Leo that he'd better stop underestimating her, but her reckless charge goes wrong when Leo sends her flying with a single blow and she falls to the ground. At this point, she's frustrated after suffering one humiliating defeat after another. Then, Leo offers her a bracelet, which she quickly reaches out to take. What she doesn't know is that this bracelet is imbued with weight magic, making it incredibly heavy. Meanwhile, Leo smiles at her with a sinister grin as he reveals his intentions. Apparently, he plans to make her train while wearing that bracelet from now on. The next day, we see Six also watching them train. After seeing how much Celia is struggling, the uncle is sure that this will be a good experience for her before she goes to Lumen. Maybe it's good for her pride to be crushed at least once. Then, he calls Leo over and gives him some good news. He's thinking of asking the Patriarch to allow him to inherit the Phoenix's breath. The mention of the Phoenix's breath takes Leo by surprise because, as far as he remembers, that technique is basically the origin of the Singer family's aura technique. Celia has heard that only recognized individuals within the family can inherit it. Celia also thinks that her father won't allow it so easily, but it seems that Six has already figured this out. He proposes a condition to Leo. If he passes the Lumen entrance exam, he will be allowed to learn the technique. Of course, this comment doesn't sit well with Celia because, in her eyes, Leo is just a brat who doesn't even know how to use aura, and since the Lumen entrance exam consists of real fights, it's going to be very dangerous for him. Well, Leo doesn't hesitate to state that he has no real combat experience, but we all know that's only true if he doesn't count his past life. Six waits for Leo's opinion, to which our boy quickly agrees, as long as his parents agree with the decision. A week passes and, finally, the day of the Lumen entrance exam arrives when they see the prominent figure of Celia Singer among the participating students. And everyone is left stunned. Meanwhile, Celia teases Leo, asking if he's nervous. It seems that after spending so much time as his personal maid, Celia has gotten so into character that she keeps referring to Leo with the title of Master. While they're standing there, the unmistakable voice of Gan catches their attention. He's actually there to see Celia, but he's a bit surprised to notice Leo is with her. This guy takes a jab at Leo, since he believes our boy doesn't belong there, as he doesn't even know how to use aura. At the same time, he tries to greet Celia politely. However, the poor guy is completely ignored by the duo, as if he doesn't exist. He gets awkward and tries to remind Celia that he is Wollivan Tratton and that he greeted her the last time they met. But to Gilligan's dismay, Celia doesn't recognize his name and quickly grabs Leo's hand to get away from the scene. Suddenly, they are called over by someone else. It's actually two siblings who appear on the scene. The taller one is Abad Leyland from the Leyland family, and he is 16 years old. The shorter girl by his side is 14-year-old Chelsea Leyland, and she shares the same last name. While Celia seems to recognize these two, Leo has no idea who they are. Celia explains that they are the Leland siblings, hailing from the same heroic lineage of the Lording Empire, the children of the Leland family. Celia is especially thrilled, because she's not at all happy to see these two. She warns Leo that the Leland siblings will be participating in the exam with them, so they can't lose to them. She definitely can't let the Singer clan lose to the Leland family, but this isn't really a problem for Leo. After all, he's from the Plab family, not the Singers. Anyway, when the two greet Celia, she has no interest in their greetings and returns the gesture. She also makes sure to introduce Leo as being from the Plab house, a noble family within the kingdom of Dath. Upon hearing that Leo doesn't have a fancy title attached to his name, Abad Leland dismisses him as insignificant. The two siblings quickly turn and walk away, throwing out the warning that they will surely be in the top spot. Needless to say, Celia does not like the Leland siblings, and she is looking forward to completely crushing them in the upcoming trials. Suddenly, someone representing the Lumen Academy steps up to the podium, immediately capturing the attention of everyone present. The man introduces himself as Albie Saron, a professor at the Lumen Academy. While Celia's expression changes to one of surprise upon seeing this prestigious figure, Leo seems unimpressed, mainly because he has no idea who this guy is. Celia is visibly annoyed that Leo doesn't even recognize someone of Albie's stature. She takes the opportunity to educate him and explains that Albie Saron is listed in the Heroes Registry, a distinguished list of individuals considered heroes of the current era. Leo takes a moment to observe the professor carefully and notices something peculiar. A huge amount of mana concentrated in Albie's left eye. Professor Albie then proceeds to address the assembled students and begins to explain the format of the entrance exam. According to Albie, the trials have two main components: one-on-one combat and monster subjugation. Traditionally, participants would take turns completing these tasks. However, Albie immediately clarifies that he considers such methods tedious and wastes no time proving his point. In an instant, he burns the sheet of paper in his hands as if completely discarding the conventional exam structure. Then, he pulls out a thick, ancient book, and, upon opening it, the professor invokes the first chapter titled Prologue, the Wild Forest. At that moment, a huge enchantment circle begins to glow beneath the feet of the entire student audience. The stage is set, and no one has any idea what the professor intends to do next. But one thing is clear: Albie Saron despises inefficiency. He declares that he will combine all the tests into a single continuous challenge and advance everything at once. To understand what is happening, we learn that the hero's record is not just a historical log, but its true value lies in its ability to manifest the world of heroes, which contains the experiences of past heroes. By accessing this world, one can inherit the power of a previous hero. In short, it's almost like a hero training system. All the students have been transported to this world of heroes, known as the Wild Forest. The professor announces that their only goal is to survive. They can team up or eliminate each other, do whatever it takes to stay alive. Those who wish to quit can break the orb in their hands and return. That's it. After looking around for a few minutes, it doesn't take our boy long to recognize the place. It looks exactly as he remembers it. You see, this used to be an elven forest before it was taken over by the witch queen Selota. Meanwhile, some students want to go back, especially since they believe this place is nothing more than an illusion, but our boy doesn't share those thoughts. As far as he can tell, although this world may have come from the examiner's memories, everything that will happen here will be real. The deadly dangers here could seriously kill someone if they aren't careful enough. With the mention of danger, Leo notices someone's presence and is soon attacked by an arrow that literally shatters the ground beneath him upon impact. Fortunately, he's safe, but when he looks in the direction of the arrow's source, he sees it's the girl from the Leland family named Chelsea. It seems she has mistaken him for a member of the Singer family, and that's why she's determined to eliminate him. But Leo quickly makes it clear that he is a member of the Platt family. However, Chelsea becomes more aggressive, thinking he's lying since she saw him with Celia earlier. Without hesitation, she unleashes her magic. Leo seems impressed to see her recite a spell that didn't exist in his previous life, but he also notes that the fundamentals of this spell are not very different. Meanwhile, Chelsea is frustrated by how calm and composed he is when facing her. To throw him off, she unleashes her impressive skill against him, but Leo simply blocks it effortlessly with a single swing of his sword, and the mana blade she threw at him simply falls to the ground. This leaves Chelsea bewildered because, as far as she can see, he didn't even use aura. So how did he block her attack so easily? Our boy simply rubs salt in her wounded ego, casually stating that her attack was too simple. He invites her to form an alliance, as it will be beneficial for her. He reminds her that whoever survives the longest will earn more points. So as a sorceress, she should at least try to pass a test before being eliminated. Needless to say what her response was, she quickly replies and boasts that she's not the kind of sorceress he thinks, but a battle mage. She feels offended by his comment where he called her attack simple. Feeling the sting of his words, she channels all her power to crush him on the spot, just to prove she's not the weakling he thinks she is. But all her attacks end up being useless. Since Leo isn't even standing in the direction the blades are going, the worst part is that she can't feel a single trace of mana anywhere. So she can't even find him. But her eyes soon meet Leo's, who is right in front of her with a clenched fist. We don't get to see if that punch lands on her terrified face or not, but one thing becomes clear. Her knees lose the strength to stand, which is a clear sign of victory for our boy Leo. However, he reminds her one more time that the offer to form an alliance is still on the table if she changes her mind. Before we can hear her answer, the scene cuts to the professors of Lumen Academy who are watching the show through a digital window. They are excited to see that the battle is finally heating up. Back with Chelsea, it seems she's getting no mercy. Leo has tied her to a tree trunk, and the expression on his face clearly shows he has no good intentions for this poor girl. He also makes sure to light a small campfire. As night is settling in, the fire intensifies, and the flames begin to get closer to the damsel in distress, tied to the trunk. Seeing the flames makes her panic, but she could avoid this fate if she agrees to cooperate with Leo. However, this lady is as stubborn as they come and flatly refuses, making it clear that she doesn't need anyone to ally with, except for her brother. She tries to use some wind magic, but her efforts prove useless because Leo has already placed a magic restricting skill, although he internally reveals to us that he doesn't have enough mana to maintain this skill. So it won't last much longer. Finally, the girl gives in, thinking she doesn't need magic to get out of this mess. But that's exactly why Leo is here. He's more than ready to keep a close eye on her to make sure she doesn't try anything funny. Without hesitation, he increases the intensity of the fire, and soon the flames begin to reach her. Even her clothes start to burn. Well, that's the last straw. The girl finally gives in and agrees to form an alliance with him. But of course, a few words aren't enough to convince Leo. He tells her to swear on her family's name. The girl quickly complies with his demand, swearing on the Leland family name that she will cooperate. Finally, Leo removes the ropes that tied her. But before she falls into the scorching flames, he holds her in his arms. The scene returns to the professors, who are diligently watching the students perform. So far, Albisalon hasn't seen a student who meets his standards. To think that most of the students chose to compete and fight each other seems completely foolish and ridiculous, the only ones showing real strength. To the point that it's noticeable are Celia Sender and Abat Leland who are working together. At least this gives him some peace of mind, as there is hope for the students. Then his attention turns to Leo and Chelsea, who are also working together. His eyes are especially fixed on Leo, although the fire trick he played on Chelsea was quite immature. Getting Chelsea to throw at him at least earns him a passing grade in Albie's eyes, especially since he doesn't possess the power or grace of Celia and Abat. However, it seems the professor is completely mistaken here, because our boy defeated Celia without even breaking a sweat. Anyway, Albisaron considers Leo an unexpected dark horse in this competition. After defeating some monsters on their way, both Leo and Chelsea decide to move forward. It seems Chelsea has finally started to realize that forming an alliance with Leo wasn't such a terrible decision after all. She then asks him what aura he is using, since she has not detected any mana in it. To her surprise, Leo casually drops the bomb that he doesn't even know how to use aura. Unsurprisingly, this shocks and surprises her. While they continue chatting, a monster is lurking behind the bushes, watching them closely. But Chelsea quickly notices the monster's presence and instantly shoots it. I'm not gonna lie, this attack was way too strong for such a weak monster. Even Leo admits that she really has impressive strength, but the way she uses it is completely wrong. Suddenly, Leo senses something strange and tells her to stop her movements. He has noticed something weird in the sand. When he crouches down, he notices dry soil, decay, and dead bodies of people. Suddenly, an explosion goes off, but Leo quickly jumps to the side, carrying Chelsea in his arms. The cunning guys who had set the trap finally come out of their hiding spot. It turns out to be William and his buddies. We all know he has beef with Leo, so it is no surprise he is here specifically to attack him. He orders one of his companions to charge, and the poor fool obeys without hesitation. Unfortunately for him, he is met with a devastating blow from Leo, leaving him sprawled on the ground. Leo stands tall, radiating total GigaChad energy, and calmly tells Chelsea to just back him up. For a moment, Chelsea is surprised to see how easily he has saved her 2 times in a row, but she quickly gets to her feet and positions herself behind him, ready to face the remaining minions. Meanwhile, Kuiban does what he does best, running for his pathetic life. He abandons his group, desperately trying to put as much distance as possible between himself and Leo. The only thought crossing his mind is to find a partner fast. As fate would have it, Celia spots him from a distance and, instead of chasing him, calmly walks in the direction he is running from. When they finally arrive at the scene, what they see is breathtaking. The area is littered with monster carcasses and the bodies of the students who tried and failed to face them. Naturally, Chelsea is happy to finally reunite with her brother. Meanwhile, Celia yells at Leo, demanding to know what the hell he is doing with Chelsea. Leo proudly states that it was his decision to form an alliance with her. However, Celia finds it hard to believe. She would rather believe him if he said he saw a cockroach doing somersaults than believe he managed to convince Chelsea, the stubborn goat, to form an alliance. To this, Leo responds casually and sinisterly that he simply convinced her. His malevolent smile unnerves even Celia, who starts to wonder what exactly he could have done to convince her. Anyway, our boy heads over to help the students he just knocked down, lifting them off the ground. Seeing this, Abed asks why Leo is helping his opponents. Our boy quickly clarifies that there is no need to fight among themselves, that it is much better to team up to defeat the challenges of this world instead of fighting selfishly like Abad. The others don't seem to understand what challenge he is referring to. Leo directs them to the nearby corpses, hinting at a bigger problem. Seeing the corpses on the ground, one of the students comments that it looks like they have been drained of their moisture. Leo clarifies that this is not the only strange thing here. He points out that this place suddenly seems completely empty of any monster presence, as if the monsters were afraid of something, as if a high-level monster had appeared and scared away the others in the forest. As the pieces fall into place, Abad finally understands what is happening. According to his understanding, the hero's first feat was to defeat a high-level monster. Just then, everyone hears a massive roar in the distance, the sound of something nearby and ominous moving deep in the forest. The roar fills the air with tension, a clear sign that the monster has finally decided to reveal itself. Meanwhile, Kuiban stumbles through the forest alone with a torch in his hand. He looks terrified, and despite being in serious trouble, his weak mind is more focused on getting revenge on our boy than on surviving. Suddenly, he notices a corpse at his feet, and there is also something behind this veil of darkness that makes him trip and fall. What he saw in the darkness is a giant monster. The monster looks like a huge spider and seems to be quite hungry. It is already clear that Woolovin is as good as dead. Now let's explore what happens with Professor Albee and the students. It turns out that an impressive number of 500 students have failed the exam. The real problem is that the selection process requires choosing at least 100 students, but only 50 are left in the test. Instead of forcing a choice, the professor believes he will only select the suitable candidates who meet his expectations. After all, the principal put him in charge knowing he would pick the best of the best. Albee is a believer in discovering heroes in times of great difficulty and has taken an interest in Leo Plab, a dark horse with unexpected talent. The question is, will this dark horse be able to pass such a difficult exam? Returning to the scene of the students in the exam, they are quickly on their feet and are having a hard time getting their bearings due to the dark atmosphere. He lights up his sword and claims he's seen something up ahead. The red glow from his sword reveals the face of the terrifying spider, which is currently devouring its prey. This strikes fear into their hearts as Abad rushes to use a magic spell and take down the threat. However, Leo is quick to stop him and advises Guyen to break the crystal. Of course, Guyen is about to become breakfast between the spider's teeth so he can barely move. He decides to break the blue crystal, sending a surge of electricity into the creature's mouth. With their preparations ready, Abad charges his Raphael spell and launches it at the monstrous threat. His attack manages to injure the monster, but it fails to land the killing blow. The four of them are horrified as they realize the level of threat they're facing. This terrifying creature is the tarantula spider princess, and she is not pretty at all. One student, recklessly, charges at it, hoping for a melee attack. He is quickly humbled with a single blow to his body, sending him crashing to the ground. Then it's Celia's turn, who arrogantly assumes she'll end the fight with a single attack. Activating her most powerful spell, she unleashes a sharp yet destructive beam of red light that pierces through the creature's body, sending waves of pain through it. However, the spider is as tough as a tank, and recovers quickly, making Celia's approach useless. Abad takes this moment to scold her, saying that the destructive power of a mage and a knight are incomparable. He unleashes a Raphael wind spell to slice the spider in an endless spiral. However, at the end of his attack, he is terrified to see the creature is still alive and well, staring them down. Sensing that her brother is in imminent danger, Chelsea uses her wind-cutting magic to help him. Despite this, Abad suffers a gash from the spider's claw, although his sister's attack cushions the blow. Using her magic, she goes to check on him after he nearly lost an arm. They've tried everything against this monster, but its incredibly fast regeneration proves their efforts useless. Despair begins to creep into their hearts as the Tarantula Queen closes in to finish them off. Leo steps in and explains that this creature is the daughter of Salot, a deadly monster from Aros's army, responsible for incinerating the elven forest. Furthermore, Leo reflects that the mana he detected in Professor Alby's left eye contained signs of the Fairy King's mana. The tarantula ruled the cursed wild forest. Not only did it destroy the elf forest, but it also devoured the Fairy King's most trusted comrade, who rebelled against it back in the day. Leo believed that Luna had responsibly defeated the tarantula, but it turns out reality is different. 1. The tarantula survived by devouring the Fairy King's assistant, who possessed the source of infinite life energy in the form of a priceless artifact, the Ring of Life. Abad is as stubborn as a mule and thinks the right thing to do is to defeat the monster himself if it's part of the exam. Both he and Celia decide to unleash consecutive attacks, hoping to defeat the creature on their own. The tarantula endures their fury, but Leo believes it's all useless, since the creature will just keep regenerating endlessly. In fact, they'll be the ones to run out of mana first. In a last-ditch effort, Celia asks for his opinion on how they should handle the monster. Leo explains that it requires the teamwork of 2, but his suggestion is immediately rejected by Abad, who selfishly hopes to overcome the monster on his own. The same goes for Celia. With both of them acting like children, our boy steps in and gives them a harsh reality check. If they don't work together to defeat the monster, they will all fail. 1, his words finally get through to Abad. 2, who considers the possibility of working together and believes it will still take time to launch a joint attack that kills the creature in a single blow. 3, the problem is that since no one but them can delay the monster, it will be difficult to decide who contributes to the fight. Leo expresses that he can buy some time for them. Celia thinks he's gone crazy and reminds him that he can't even use aura yet. Leo confirms that he can hold out for no more than 5 minutes in his current state. The Mage Abad fears that their coordinated attack might fail by then. However, Leo is absolutely sure that it will work and picks up a weapon from the ground. He adds that the elements of fire and wind share a great affinity with each other, so it will be enough despite their differences. The Sword Princess and the Great Mage become allies, while Leo looks at the ugly spider as a good challenge and a reminder of his past life. The fight begins with our boy impressively cutting off one of the creature's limbs with a sharp blow, leaving the other 2 students shocked. He then proceeds to annihilate the creature's face and feels satisfied upon finding the Tardos monster. Exploring a flashback from the past, we see an elf child running in terror and tears. Unfortunately, the Tardos monster captures him with its web. With the child completely immobilized in the creature's web, there is no longer any chance of escape. The spider arrives quickly, ready to devour him whole. The child begs for his mother's help and awaits his impending doom until a radiant being appears like a savior, a being of light that stops the creature from harming the child. Luna, furious that the creature is wreaking havoc in her homeland, and even devoured the contractor who was the right hand of the elven forest, unleashes a light attack aimed at the fanged creature. Her magic attack envelops Tardos, trapping the creature before sending a pillar of thunder. Luna didn't expect that the Eros army had arrived and also conquered the elven forest at that time. Leo, in his original life, took it upon himself to free the child, helping him escape from the web. Let's return to the current scene, where he is standing with an axe in hand, ready to buy time for his companions. Still, he can't do much without his aura, asking Chelsea for help. Leo instructs her to use elemental magic to attack it with weapons. He evasively dodges a blow thanks to his enormous speed. Chelsea is worried that he might get caught in the attack at this rate. However, Leo emphasizes that he'll be fine as long as she hurries. 1. Chelsea activates her magic, ready to mold any type of weapon for him. 2. Leo doesn't care which one as long as it works. She manifests a weapon for him while he guesses that she's preparing a scimitar and a sword. With both weapons in hand, Leo unleashes a flurry of slashes, cutting the spider with each weapon. Snapping out of it, Chelsea throws another one in his direction. He catches a dagger and a battle axe. His shocking and overwhelming physical capabilities have left Chelsea in awe, so much so that she thinks he's a martial arts expert. Even Abad can't help but think he's very strong. Still, he's not invincible, as a sharp cut grazes his face. Leo thinks that if he can't stop one damn spider here and now, his friends will never stop making fun of him in the afterlife. He amps up the intensity and slashes at the spider, asking for another weapon. Unfortunately, Chelsea has run out of weapons, which leaves him surprised. Fortunately, Celia has already finished preparing her final blow. She unleashes a roaring spiral of fire, incinerating the creature and defeating it at once. The ring of life drops, cleansed from its body, and the monster is finally subdued. Celia falls to the ground, grateful that it's all over, but she can't help but focus on Leo's superhuman performance. For holding off Tardos for 5 minutes, Celia tries to praise him, but Chelsea is even faster with her words. She has become his #1 fan and thinks that his performance, a moment ago, was comparable to that of legendary heroes. Leo doesn't think much of it, but this girl is going crazy for him, as she wants to become a battle magic specialist. She asks him to teach her. Funnily enough, Celia hopes that Chelsea gets exclusive training from him so she can experience what it really means to suffer. Anyway, our boy proceeds to take the Ring of Life, which manifests Prince Sid as a fairy. He revives the prince's memory by saying his name. Upon hearing that, the prince returns to the ring and accepts Celia as the fairy queen. This is all thanks to Professor Albie stumbling upon the Mana Eye. The countdown for the testing grounds begins. The trial stage has earned them the reward of the Fairy King's oath before their transfer. Leo recognizes someone from his past life. We fast forward to Kayemba Dian, the Academy's director, who is reviewing the exam report from the Western Territory. His assistant wonders how many students Albie passed due to his strict requirements. The director is quite surprised to see that 40 students passed the exam, which is still a low number. He isn't too disappointed, since he thought he would only see 10 students pass at most. This is still a great achievement. Celia and Abad seem to be the top candidates according to his expectations. The director heard there was someone recommended as the year's representative. It's quite surprising that Albie, of all people, recommended a student. They are almost certain it has to be a candidate from Sincero Leland, but it turns out this candidate is someone no one has ever heard of before. A man who surpasses both Celia and Abad in performance. Now we go to Professor Albie's side, who is keenly evaluating the skills of the boy he recommended. Leo is announced as the representative of the Night Division. The director expresses his surprise upon hearing the professor speak so well of this brilliant student. He specifically described this candidate as someone with the talent of a hero. Now that the exam is over, our boy is enjoying a hot sauna, delighting in its warmth. The reward for passing the exam is the Fairy King's oath. Now, when it comes to overcoming a hero's living world, there isn't supposed to be a typical reward, but curiously he was given one as an exception. Leo doesn't understand why and sees his mother standing in front of him. She confronts the boy, asking him if he knows why she was expelled from the House of Singer. In an attempt to rescue an ally, she ended up losing control and unleashed the flames of Singer, but she hasn't regretted her decision even now. Fixing her attention on her only son, she wants the boy's incredible talent to be steered in the right direction. Furthermore, she is delighted to congratulate him on being accepted into the academy. Upon setting foot in the glorious, luminous city, students are requested to collect their belongings before heading out the gate. Lumia is the center of the world, and its most prized institution is the Lumen Academy. With Leo finally having arrived, his uncle Leo comes to greet him and shares his congratulations for passing. Leo wonders what he is doing here and learns that the House of Singer is currently busy, resolving an endless debate that has been ongoing for at least a month. He asks the boy if he knows the reason for the conflict. Leo wonders if it has something to do with the inheritance of the Phoenix's breath. His uncle confirms that it is indeed the case. And although his older sister is not part of the Singer clan, Leo is inevitably her son. Furthermore, the clan elders are very impressed by the boy's achievement in passing the Western exam, known for being extremely difficult. Leo is handed a special subspace key, which he decides to use immediately. Upon reciting a command, it unlocks access to a special book. His uncle instructs him to stain the book's pages with his blood. Leo follows his instructions, biting his thumb and letting drops of blood fall onto the page. Now that he has shared his blood, he has access to the information inside the book, something that no one else will be able to know. And although it's not easy to master the techniques of the singers, his uncle trusts the boy's talent and believes he will get the hang of it quickly. With this, he officially welcomes him to the House of Singer. After their meeting, Celia requests to meet Leo in an unknown location. Suddenly, a girl accidentally bumps into him, causing both of them to fall. The girl quickly gathers her books, apologizing for her hurried rush, and leaves. Leo notices her card, picks it up, and learns her name is Chloe Muller. And he's already late. He apologizes since he unexpectedly ran into his uncle before getting there. With a big smile, Celia curiously asks him what happened to answer her burning question. The boy commands the flames of the Singer family, questioning if he's doing things the right way. Seeing this, she is left completely in disbelief. The confident Leo managed to master the secret technique in less than a month. His incredible achievement leaves her in shock, and she wonders if he's even human. The Sword Princess and the Forgotten Hero see a ship docking nearby. Professor Anandu introduces himself as the instructor for the night class. He wants the students to board the ship immediately as they will be departing for Lumen soon. The journey begins with the students calmly enjoying their time. Leo and Celia look like a couple, which prompts a confident young man to make a comment that annoys Celia. This is an alchemist from the Kingdom of Moira, and he's a merchant with all sorts of products to sell. He tries to do business with the couple in case they need supplies for school. Leo introduces himself with his student identity and explains that he belongs to the Kingdom of Edad. Thomas is visibly surprised to hear this, because that kingdom passed the difficult Western exam. Leo wants to address the elephant in the room, as he's finding the whole situation a bit strange. It seems too quiet. But even though Celia thinks this is the standard treatment freshmen should receive after passing the exam, the boy turns his attention to their instructor, while Thomas agrees with Celia's understanding of the situation. Suddenly, the ship shakes. A gigantic tentacle rises from the ocean, almost crushing Thomas, while the rest of the students beg their instructor to intervene. The teacher, casually sipping his wine, scoffs at them, even asking if they need help. He reminds them that students of Lumen Academy are expected to do their best in times of danger, so this is a challenge they must overcome on their own. They are facing the ugliest of the ugly, a giant kraken that is watching them. Even in this tense situation, the Forgotten Hero keeps his composure and slices off the creature's tentacle with his sword. Celia is also doing well on her own, unleashing the Sword Princess's fire attack. The Kraken reacts with a jet of water, drenching Celia. The monster grabs Thomas, who is screaming non-stop. Seeing this, both Celia and Leo dash at full speed to cut the creature. The greedy alchemist is surprised, as he expected the Sword Princess to do well on her own due to her reputation, but he didn't expect another student to be just as fierce. Poor Thomas is almost crushed by a frozen tentacle and shouts at the person who could have killed him just a moment ago. Chloe, the girl with glasses who bumped into our boy. She is controlling ice magic and keeping the monster at bay on her own. She scolds the alchemist, who is unnecessarily becoming a burden in the fight instead of staying back. Thomas snaps that people like her don't care about those weaker than them. After smashing another tentacle, we see the dynamic duo of Abad and Chelsea jumping into action. They are not yet done with their rivalry between the two clans, but the battle mage has her sights set on our boy, despite being swarmed by several monsters in the lake. As they head towards the academy, the instructor thinks this is the perfect welcome for the freshmen. Enjoying his wine, he comments on the top students: Chelsea, Celia, Abed, Chloe, 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 Chloe. Chloe, 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 Chloe. Her swordsmanship is the definition of perfection. And he's reacting as if he's predicting every single attack. The instructor is glad he'll get to see the boy unleash his full potential in his classes. Anyway, the useless alchemist quickly runs out of potions by the time they finally reach their destination. As they get off the ship, the instructor hopes the students get used to dealing with monsters since they'll have to face them frequently. It's time to explore the glorious entrance hall. The training grounds at Lumen Academy are extraordinary. Many spectators hope the first-year students will put on a good show. The entrance ceremony is about to begin. The night division is gathered by their instructor, who wants the captains to come to the front of the line. The Academy's headmaster is overseeing the announcement, expecting great things from this year's hero candidates, who stresses to the students that if they ever want to become strong heroes, they'll have to risk their lives and will always be required to surpass their limits. Slamming his fist on the ground, the headmaster believes that if they can't do the bare minimum he just mentioned, then they don't belong at this prestigious institution. And then 1 second later, he melts into a grandfatherly attitude, acting as if he didn't just scare the daylights out of them, who points and asks why everyone has suddenly gone quiet. His brilliant reputation and his image as the shining swordmaster get tarnished on a daily basis. Next up, it's time for a speech from the first-year representative, someone the freshmen are eagerly awaiting. It's not Celia, not Abad, not Chloe, and not anyone else. Only the name Leo Plab is chanted, which surprises even him. He quickly turns to the professor and realizes he must have been the one who recommended him. Leo approaches the podium and addresses the professors and upperclassmen with his speech. While this is happening, many students are buzzing about this unknown student. They don't know what happened or who he is. The speech finally comes to an end after a grueling moment. When Leo Plab is asked about his goals as the year's representative, he decides his objective is to intentionally provoke the students behind him. Leo delivers his words very politely and professionally, catching the attention of the other instructors. They think it's going to be a very tame ceremony until our boy goes nuts and openly declares he's ready to take on anyone who challenges him for the position. This hostile and bold announcement provokes the top rankers, but Leo really doesn't care who he has to face. With the announcement made, the students go to their dorms. Starting tomorrow, the exploratory classes will run for 1 week. This is a special trial period for students to take any class they want, which will later help them decide on 3 subjects to major in. They're advised to get some rest so they aren't late for class on their first day. Leo's room is assigned right next to Thomas, who is excited for his first class the next day. They say goodnight to each other and Leo collapses onto his bed. His mind is busy wondering what he is supposed to achieve at the academy. Thomas is hopeful, taking advantage of his spot at the top institution, desperately find his long-lost hero record. The next day, in the cafeteria, Tomas wants to share a seat with our boy, who doesn't really care and approves the request. Leo gets an annoying visit, someone he's not familiar with. This guy is Duran from the Central region, and he's here to confirm if the challenge he expressed in the announcement holds any weight. Leo understands that his speech was provocative in its entirety, After all, he invited a stranger to face him aggressively. Duran thinks he's a big shot from the central region, but Leo simply doesn't care and keeps drinking his fruit juice. Annoyed at being underestimated, Duran throws a deafening kick that sends the table flying. However, Leo's superhuman speed helps him rearrange the ingredients and form his perfect hamburger. This man is the definition of class, as he turned the occasion into a meal. Leo provokes him by saying he couldn't just ignore free food being wasted like that. Duran, on the other hand, is in the mood to kill this guy with every word. He thinks the first-year representative is much weaker than him, which his ego can't stand. Intervening in the fight, their instructor casually puts both his arms around the two students. He politely mentions their ranks as the representative and the region's captain. The instructor hopes they are prepared to receive the corresponding punishment for engaging in a fight on the first day. You can see it on their faces that they are both begging for help. Let's fast forward and visit the first exploratory class of the KM department. For some reason, Celia is worried about Leo's absence. Finally, he shows up completely exhausted. 1, his condition catches Celia's attention, who thinks he fought with someone. 2, Leo decides not to say anything for the time being. 3, the class is about to start, and he introduces himself as the instructor for the first evening classes. 4, Tomas notices that Duran is already on bad terms with Leo, while their teacher talks about the 3 main powers derived from mana. The first is magical energy. The second is soul energy. And finally, we have aura. Of the 3, aura is considered the most difficult to handle. Celia adds that this is because it requires losing the fluidity of mana during the conversion process. Her answer is spot on, as magical energy and soul energy tend to use mana in its natural state. But aura, on the other hand, absorbs mana and converts it to suit the body. The instructor demonstrates what an aura looks like and wonders if any of them know how to use the processed aura from their bodies. Gathering her thoughts, Celia fails to find a reasonable answer. The first-year representative breaks his silence and explains that using the power of an aura requires burning mana. Leo has reached the correct conclusion, as the instructor pointed out, which leads him to ask about the most crucial aspect of the mana burning process. Leo answers quickly, saying that it's all about endurance. Impressed by the boy's understanding of aura, the instructor asks him if he has ever studied the concept before. It turns out he hasn't, which is, again, an impressive feat. A person who hasn't even studied aura extensively somehow managed to grasp its true essence. Deciding to end the theoretical explanation, the instructor believes it's time for a little exercise. Using his aura, he launches a wave-shaped platform called Aura Step, which fundamentally relies on concentrating aura power in the legs. The instructor descends to the ground and mentions excitedly that the applications of aura are practically infinite. Some of the other students experiment and face off against each other, while Celia teases our boy, telling him she's ready to teach him how it works as long as he calls her sister. Leo doesn't feel a critical need for her help, as he's fine with just knowing the principles of aura. Noticing Duran on the side, the instructor thinks it's a good time to address the commotion that happened in the cafeteria. Some students, like Chelsea, don't know what happened, and Thomas further piques their curiosity with his comments. Both Leo and Duran are called to the front by the instructor. First, the instructor confronts Duran and asks what bothered him so much. After hearing Duran's dismissive response, the instructor decides to offer the perfect suggestion. He wants the captain of the Central Region to face the first-year representative in a racing competition, all to decide which student is qualified to lead the class. The instructor explains that both students can use their aura openly, with no restrictions holding them back, which seems like a perfect advantage for Duran. The day of the competition has arrived, and Thomas, being the expert businessman, is busy organizing a betting system. The first contestant is the genius from the House of Moira and the master of lightning aura, Duran. Facing him is the dark horse, with no special background, a man who leaped over even the region captains and became the first-year representative, Leo. The students expect great things from the first-year representative. After all, they are extremely disappointed to find out he can't even use a simple move like Aura Step. Everyone thinks his position is unjustified and that someone like the Central Region captain is better suited for the representative role. Realizing it's the perfect time to start, the instructor lays down the rules. The first one to reach the finish line will win, and their opponent will have to accept the results without fail. The race is about to begin. Even Celia thinks this competition is too much for Leo to win, as Duran specializes in speed, not to mention his incredibly fast lightning aura. Even with those odds against him, Celia hopes Leo will surpass everyone's expectations, achieving the impossible. As soon as the professor shouted, "Go!" the racers took off. Duran Moira covered himself in lightning aura, confident that his speed would leave Leo in the dust. As expected, it seems the brilliant representative from the Central Region is going to make quick work of the track, while the first-year representative is left behind. Leo started to infuse a bit of aura into his feet to speed up a little. The audience quickly labeled him as a guy who cheated his way into the representative position. Amidst the crowd that was unanimously against him, a lone flower cheered for Leo. Chelsea's passionate shout of support stood out. Focused on crushing the opposition, Duran continued to demonstrate his family's signature technique. He's really as fast as lightning. Seeing him cross the halfway point in such an inhuman time, Carr began to worry about his friend. It looks like Leo will be at a disadvantage if he doesn't pick up his pace, so the young man looked around the track. To everyone's surprise, he didn't speed up, but slowed down instead. Once his momentum stopped, Leo started running off the track and towards the walls, and while it's true that Celia believes in him, there's no logical explanation for his actions. He looks like a fool. While everyone watching was baffled, confused, and lost, Leo was focused on increasing the density of his aura in his feet. With multiple successive inhuman jumps, he went completely off the track onto the grass and finally jumped into the stands. He turned around and nonchalantly watched as Duran widened his lead with constant speed. The density of his aura reached its peak. The burning force in his feet cracked the stands he was on. With a powerful leap, he launched himself back onto the track with enormous force. It was so impactful that the jump left a small explosion in its wake, distracting Duran for a moment. From that explosion, Leo shot out like a red meteor, crossing the rest of the track. The mischievous demon even taunted his opponent as he flew over Duran, calling him a slow and arrogant brat. The speeding meteor quickly reached the finish line. His graceful landing was a sight to behold. Duran watched from a few meters away, stunned. His lightning cloak had been nullified. This was a clear and resounding defeat for him. Leo threw his head back and smiled confidently. He had won. But the damage to the stands was considerable, though it was worth it. The crowd that had been bad-mouthing him just a moment before was baffled. They knew that what they had just seen was no joke. As far as they knew, Duran was the fastest among the first-year students, and to think someone could beat him was absurd. Moreover, he had lost to a boy who hadn't even learned to use aura properly yet. Among everyone in the crowd, one of the few who understood what Leo really did was Celia. She knew he hadn't used the aura step. What he showed was a complete phoenix step. Since Leo had won, Carr and Chelsea were overflowing with joy, full of praise for their friend. The professor silently deliberated on what he had just seen. Duran used his specialty, the lightning aura, and increased his speed, which was to be expected, but the speed the boy displayed was still impressive. Meanwhile, Leo was significantly slower in the traditional sense, but he was much better at handling his aura. He gathered and concentrated his fire aura in his feet to propel himself, creating a single aura step in the process, being a flawless application of a simple concept. One, being the sportsman that he is. Leo approached Duran and offered his hand, telling him it was a good competition, even admitting that if it had been a long-distance race, the results would have been different. 2, still resentful of his defeat, the brat refused to shake his hand and even shoved him with his shoulder. 3, the professor was sure that among the current generation of disciples, they could finally make a formidable hero. As soon as Leo reached the corner where his friends were, Chelsea immediately showered him with praise. He was so cool that she expressed her desire to train with him. Carl asked Celia why Chelsea was so interested in Leo and not him, when the answer was so blatantly obvious. As class had ended, Kara invited everyone to the cafe, even offering to treat everyone. Leo apologized. as he couldn't join them. Without another word, he silently walked away from his group when they asked where he was going. Leo simply replied that he was going to sit in on the summoning classes. Confused, his friends asked why a student from the night division would go and sit in on a summoning class. As always, the reason was for research purposes. There was still something Leo couldn't understand. Why did the Fairy King give him the oath as a reward? As far as he knew, rewards from the hero's world were related to the power of the world's owner. The reward he received seemed to be related to summoning, but Professor Albie was a pure mage and not a summoner. By that logic, Leo should have received a magic-related skill. Besides, to make contact with a fairy, one must go to Fadyland. Whatever reward he received would not be useful to him for now. While Leo was waiting at the location for the summoning classes, a familiar voice asked if he was also a summoning student. It turned out to be the Eastern captain and the top of her class, named Celia. Unlike the other captain who just ran off, this lady is polite, cheerful, and kind. They exchanged pleasantries, and she insisted that he call her by her name now. She was sure that Leo was a student from the night division, so seeing that he also had an interest in summoning was very unexpected. He stated that he was simply interested in the spirit arts. If that's the case, then they'll be seeing each other more often in many classes. When she asked what spirit he had made a contract with, Leo summoned a beautiful water fairy out of thin air. Unfortunately, Leo had not yet made a single contract. Kind as ever, she insisted that if he ever needed help with spirit summoning, he shouldn't hesitate to call on her. Leo wasn't one to turn down help or connections. Then, he made the mistake of asking a lady how old she was. Sia smiled and replied that she was 17 years old. She also knew that Leo was younger than her, at only 15. In Leo's mind, he was thinking about how young Sia looked. She looked even younger than Chelsea. Sia noticed his brief pause and confronted him, asking if he was thinking something rude, to which Leo denied it. That's right, boys always deny it anyway. She moved closer to him to tell him that she was deeply impressed by his race against Duran. In fact, she was in the crowd while it was happening. The image of him blazing across the track at full speed was burned into her mind. With determination, she asked him to accept her challenge someday. Amused, Leo smiled and didn't back down. After meeting all sorts of bombastic characters, it was nice to finally meet a genuine person. And so, the exploratory class of the summoning division officially began. Their location was unusual. Instead of a classroom, they were outdoors. Some notable figures were present. These two people with white faces and hair had to be important characters and not just simple extras. Leo surveyed the area and saw that very few students were gathered. He expected as much. Summoning isn't a popular choice after all. Just as he was wondering why the class was being held outdoors, the answer came flying from the sky. A huge, scaly body with wings that covered the Sunday. It flew over the students' heads. The creature landed, displaying its fearsome figure for all to see. It was a black wyvern. Some of the students with little willpower lost the strength in their knees at the sight of the beast. Then, the woman riding the wyvern smiled and claimed that her wyvern seemed to have taken a liking to this class. She jumped from her mount and introduced herself as Ura Marin, the summoning professor who will be teaching the first-year students for the whole school year. Ura is an A-class beauty with her long white hair, a toned body, and devilish features. The hormonal students just wanted her to be their summoning professor. At that moment, Leo thought that if the Shameless Two had been there, they would have lost their minds seeing a woman with a different type of charm from Luna and Lenyas. They would surely have been inspired to create more cultural art. Getting straight to the point, Miss Ura addressed her rookies. The fact that they were in this prestigious program must mean they had some talent in the field. The first-year students responded affirmatively. Miss Ura liked how confident they were, so they would be moving immediately to the practice area. She called for Carlo, the associate professor for first-year summoning, to bring the griffins. Miss Ura explained they would ride in groups of 2, as they had enough griffins to accommodate everyone. The problem is that this was everyone's first time handling something as capricious as a griffin. As soon as she heard a complaint, Miss Ura's eyes turned hostile, and she asked if they wanted to listen to her lesson or not, jumping onto her black wyvern. She announced that those who thought they couldn't ride a griffin should just give up and leave. Her scaly beast mirrored her intensity. It roared and flapped its wings, taking off while establishing its dominance. While everyone was shocked, one student stood up proud and unbothered. Associate Professor Carlo chimed in slightly, telling the kids to hurry up and follow the professor. Once they got over their initial fear and uncertainty, most of the students discovered that the griffins were gentler than they thought, although some of these four-legged birds are very tricky to handle. It's just a matter of luck. Leo and Vizia partnered up for the activity. She politely asked if she could take the reins, and Leo gladly agreed. Thus, the students were lifted off the ground 2 by 2. Those who adapted quickly caught up with the professor's pace, overtaking the others by taking flight. They didn't expect to be allowed to do something as bold as riding a griffin on the first day, as was to be expected from Lumen's first-class programs. The students' uneasiness regarding the griffins practically vanished. Some students even started arguing about who should take the reins. Sia and Leo were flying effortlessly through the sky. With Sia as the pilot, she was a bit worried, but the griffin they had was a real sweetheart. Although it was still better to be cautious, griffins are difficult to control, especially for novice riders. Seeing that everything was going well, Professor Ura decided to shake things up and took out a whistle, blowing it hard, emitting a barely perceptible sound that only the griffins could hear. As soon as the four-legged birds heard the melody, it was as if something primitive awakened within them. Their wild nature came out and all the birds began to behave erratically. The weak-willed students turned to the professor for help, not knowing that she was the reason the beasts were going wild. Professor Ura thought that those who couldn't even handle an out-of-control griffin shouldn't call themselves students of Lumen Academy. Even a reasonably experienced young summoner was having a hard time with her griffin. While she was trying to control the animal with the reins, Leo grabbed her hand and waist to stabilize her seat. He warned her that trying to overpower the griffins would only make them act even more unruly. His touch was gentle. Leo subtly moved his fingers to keep the mountainous animal under control, taking over from behind. He shifted gears and made the griffin fly faster than ever. They were flying so fast and steadily that they eventually overtook the professor and her partner. Professor Ura praised his control over the beast and turned to Carlo to confirm if the top representative was an applicant for the night specialization. According to the records, that should be the case. He was flying so well that she wondered if he had a personal griffin at home. However, according to Carlo's records, Leo doesn't come from a noble family that could afford one, which must mean he was operating purely on talent. It was still early in the class, but Professor Ura was optimistic that she might have found a little hidden gem after that mess in the sky. Every student finally arrived at the Summoner's Island, the practice field for the summoning majors. Many of the guys were throwing up on the beach after such a nauseating ride. On the other hand, Leo was simply strolling along the white sandy beach looking for a suitable fruit. When he finally found one with the perfect size and ripeness, he reached out to pluck it from the tree and saw a burnt feather. His mind started racing with possibilities, but he kept it to himself for now. After picking the ripe fruit, he gave it to the griffin as a sign of gratitude for bringing them safely to the island. With everyone present, Professor Ura called everyone to gather around. Right now, they would be having a practical exam on their first day, no less. Some of those guys just wanted to check out the exploration class, but now they were facing a pop quiz. Professor Ura explained that, compared to the other two specializations, the path that summoners must walk is much longer. Everyone should be aware of that if they want to summon. Just having control over mana isn't enough to make a proper contract with a suitable spirit. The right affinity with the spirit is needed to command summons skillfully, and proper taming ability is a must. The path is difficult and complicated, which is why the number of summoner heroes is considerably lower than the other two traditional classes. However, compared to other heroes, summoners who achieve the title accomplish much more than the vast majority. The great summoners have etched their names deep into history. That is the appeal of being a summoner. Every student here wishes to become a legendary figure in their own right. Elisa Ergin, from the famous Northern Summoner family, the Ergin clan, accepted the challenge and asked the professor what kind of test they would have to face. Professor Ura explained that, as its name suggests, the island of summons is full of beasts and spirits. Since a summon is considered a form of weapon for summoners, the exam will test each student's taming ability. With that in mind, the content of the exam is simple. They just have to tame a summon in the forest and bring it back to the beach. After taming and making a contract, they get to keep the summons. The students erupted in celebration. It's not every day they get the chance to tame their own beast. While everyone else ran frantically into the forest, excited to find their new pets, Leo simply walked calmly towards the forest. Surprisingly, Elisa followed him from the entrance. The rumors about his victory over Duran had spread quickly, and seeing him in the summoner class, she couldn't help but greet him. The other prominent students in the class noticed this interaction. Leo waved to Elisa and casually insisted that he was just doing his best. Seeing him dismiss her as if she were just any commoner, Elisa got irritated, observing her students from afar. Professor Ura could already see the key members of her freshman class. A few minutes later, several students had already begun the process of taming the beasts they chose. However, none of them caught Leo's attention. Some students noticed that the freshman representative was going too deep into the forest. Some were praying for his downfall, thinking he wouldn't manage to tame a summon, would get a 10 and go back to being a caveman in the Knights Major. Unfazed by all the commotion, Leo followed the trail as deep as he could. His guiding light was the feather he had seen from the orange griffin a few minutes ago. Its tip was badly burned, but now it was returning to its original state. He found a clearing in the middle of the forest, and after making sure he wouldn't be interrupted, he summoned the fire of Singur from within him and reduced the feather to ashes. Feeling a scorching sensation coming from behind him, his suspicions were confirmed. In Leo's hometown, life had slowed down since the boy left the nest. Reina was cooking something worthy of a quality film, an outdoor meal. Still, she was worried about her little one. Technically, it was his first day of school, so she shouldn't be so concerned. In truth, if Reina could see what her son was getting into, she would know that worrying was not at all irrational. She tried to reassure herself by telling herself that Leo was a strong boy. Meanwhile, her son was being surrounded by the most intense heat imaginable. He was being surrounded by the fire of one of the 3 great summons, the legendary Phoenix. As Leo spoke with a voice that commanded the flames, the Phoenix was confused to see a mere child using the fire of Singur. The legendary beast only appeared when it perceived the rain as flame. Upon hearing his mother's name, Leo asked the Phoenix how it knew his mom. It seemed the Phoenix had appeared just in time. The legendary beast was surprisingly familiar with Leo's mother, claiming it owed a great debt to Reina. Hello, this is Fanina, one of the 3 mystical summons, the elusive Phoenix. She introduced herself properly, giving Leo the respect that Reina's bloodline deserved. Leo responded to the respectful introduction with one of his own and asked Fanina to elaborate on her relationship with his mother. The Phoenix confessed that Leo's mother saved Fanina's life, the summoner Elena Londa. Hearing the name startled Leo. Elena Londa was a true heroine. The incident occurred while Elena was clearing a dungeon in Silent. She had lost all her companions and was in danger of losing her own life. At that moment, Reina Surger arrived in a blaze of glory to save her. She was a worthy knight, but in the process of saving the heroine, Reina lost her burning aura. If it had not been for that event, Reina would have surely achieved the coveted rank of hero. It was the first time Leo had heard the whole story, but his mother always told him she did not regret for a moment what she did on that fateful day. Fanina laughed, knowing that Reina truly was that type of knight. Changing the subject, Leo asked her why a legendary phoenix would be in Lumen. Unfortunately, Fanina could not tell him the reason. She was also confused as to why a young knight would be on the island of summons. When Leo explained that he was also taking summoning classes, Fanina felt compelled to take a closer look at the boy. Seeing the rich aura within him, almost as if he were not a child, Fanina burst into laughter. Considering their meeting to be fate, she could finally repay the debt she owed his mother. Fanina urged Leo to extend his hand and hold her flame. The fire danced around his palm and eventually took the shape of an egg. Inside this egg was the child of a phoenix. Fanina hoped that one day, when Leo became a great summoner, he would form a contract with her child. It was unfortunate that a summoner had already been designated to receive the egg, but Fanina preferred Leo. When the young man asked if it would be possible to hatch and tame it now, the phoenix almost fell to the ground in surprise. Before she could stop him from trying to start the process, a burning light had already appeared around the boy's body. Fanina tried to warn him that it was far too early to do this. If things went wrong, he could even lose his life. With unwavering concentration, Leo reached the point of no return. Fanina was forced to accept that his willingness to challenge the impossible without flinching was a trait he inherited from his mother. All he could do was wish him luck with the egg's incubation process. It was as if only he and the fire inside him existed in the world. Leo reached out his hand, captivated by the beautiful flame, and as soon as his palm touched the small fire, it grew into a wild and unstoppable blaze. Leo panicked and pulled back his hand. The heat was starting to make it impossible to breathe. This is the caliber of the Phoenix's flames. This test was meant for him to experience what the mythical beast endures, since, as a result of burning their bodies to emit powerful flames, a phoenix must endure unbearable pain every day of its life. Leo, with flesh burning for all eternity, continuously regenerating at a monstrous speed. Even with a little of that pain, Leo could already understand it, which is why he stopped fighting the pain and accepted the fire. The fire swallowed him whole as he joined the phoenix in its pain. The flame reached its peak, running rampant all over his body, and suddenly, the egg in his hands began to crack and shatter. Leo opened his eyes with new wisdom and acceptance for the agony engraved in his soul. The fire burning his flesh slowly coiled around the egg, greatly accelerating the incubation process. Fanina, curious, asked him if he had succeeded, and he confidently replied that he had. She smiled and labeled him a true genius for pulling off such an insane move. If a phoenix tells you that you'll be the greatest summoner in the world, you'd better believe it. Before the egg could fully hatch, Fanina was already congratulating the young man on making a successful contract. The eggshells turned to ash, and what was left was a small, adorably tiny chick named Fiora. Fanina was so excited that she transformed into her human form and entrusted her little one to Leo. At first glance, Fiora only looked like an ordinary red chick, although it was really very cute. By noon, most of the students had already returned to the beach, almost all of them with harmless summons that can be easily found on the outskirts of the forest. Professor Ura turned to her colleague Carlo and asked him how much time was left for the other students to return. Well, those who haven't returned only have 5 minutes left to do so, and as expected, the only ones left were the 4 most outstanding ones. From deep within the forest, a rumbling sound was heard. A giant bear came running out, knocking down the trees and everything in its path. On the back of the cute predator was none other than the disheveled China. She managed to tame a water bear. As a future knight, that's an impressive feat. Her entrance was quickly overshadowed by the shadow that loomed over her tamed beast. The quiet boy had tamed a shadow crow as his summon, and now he was cultivating Aura, riding on one of its claws, flying towards the beach. Even the famous summoner families would find it difficult to tame a shadow crow. He only managed to tame one, but he hadn't made a contract yet. However, he is living up to Professor Ura's expectations. He has done more than enough. 1 minute later, the students began to panic as they saw a perfect white snake slithering towards the beach, with Elisa riding on it. Elisa smugly claimed that she was the one who contracted this Gorgon snake because they didn't have one in her family, although in reality she was just farming for her Pokedex. Finally, Carlo gave the signal that time was up, announcing the end of the exam. Fortunately, the last student reached the beach at the very last second. Compared to the grand entrances of the other 3, Leo simply walked calmly onto the beach with a small chick nested on his head. If his classmates inspired fear and awe, his image simply exuded cuteness. His foolish and mediocre classmates burst into laughter upon seeing him, thinking he had tamed a chicken due to his incompetence in summoning. While everyone else was laughing, Professor Ura felt a chill run down her spine, as this boy had brought a phoenix for his exam. At sunset, the first-year summoning class had officially ended, and the students were escorted back to the academy. While everyone else's day was already over, Leo still had some business to attend to. He adjusted his tie and knocked on the office door. A sweet voice told him to enter. Upon opening the door, he was greeted by the sight of Professor Ura in her casual attire, with the sunset light highlighting her features. She immediately stopped what she was doing and invited him to have a seat. Professor Ura confessed that today was the first time she had ever seen a baby phoenix. In fact, she didn't even know there was a mystical summon on the Summoner's Island. A first-year student forming a contract with a phoenix is not something you see every day. It is an unprecedented achievement in the entire history of the Academy. Professor Ura approached the young man, catching him with her inquisitive gaze, and told him she knew what he really was. Leo swallowed nervously. Perhaps he had shown off too much and had unintentionally revealed his true identity, but his worries dissipated as soon as Professor Ura hugged him tightly and called him an unprecedented summoning genius, one never seen before, as she wanted to praise and acknowledge what he had achieved. The professor thought they should keep his contract with the Phoenix a secret for now. If such big news were to be made public, things would get very chaotic quickly. For the time being, she asked him to be sure to choose summoning as his main major on the day the exploratory classes end. In her eyes, this young man has the natural talent to become a summoner hero, one who will be remembered for generations. The next day, Lumen Academy and its residents woke up to a beautiful morning. Chloe was walking through the halls, still sleepy and yawning from not getting enough rest. Carla saw her yawn and teased that her mouth would rip if she kept that up. Chloe felt and looked tired, as she had been staying up all night reading magic books. She saw the guy she had run into a few days ago. Leo took Chloe Muller's ID from his pocket and returned it to its owner. She thanked the first-year representative for saving her the trouble of having to request a new one. What she found strange was the fact that Leo, he was also going to take magic classes. He reasoned that since they were still in the exploratory period, he would take the opportunity to attend as many lectures as he could. Chloe, on the other hand, was only interested in magic, so the only classes she attended were for that subject. Carr whispered quietly to his friend that this girl, Chloe, this ice woman, was aiming for the top of the magic division. Since Carr's mouth has no volume control, Chloe, the woman herself, heard all of that. Carr immediately noticed the drop in temperature in the room as soon as she stared at him. Just as he was about to try and talk his way out of the problem and back away, a huge pillar of ice appeared in front of him. It was a perfect, crystallized pillar that almost trapped Carr inside the iceberg. With nowhere else to go, Chloe dragged him to the front seats to make him behave and pay attention to the class. The next second, another familiar face appeared in the lecture hall, in fact, two of them. It was no surprise to see Abadi, Chelsea, Luan from the prestigious family of mages present for the magic class. Suddenly, the door burst open and the atmosphere in the room changed completely. As soon as he entered, he effortlessly captured everyone's attention, walking towards the podium in front of the class. The girls started blushing and whispering about how handsome their magic professor was, with his elegant look, a well-placed tie, and impeccable style. Today, Lenore introduced himself as the first professor of the magic division. He brought a thick stack of papers with him. Before starting today's exploratory class, he wanted to do something drastic. With a simple flick of his finger, the stack of papers and his desk flew across the room and finally arranged themselves neatly on each student's desk. As an introduction, everyone would have to take a magical theory exam right from the start. Of course, everyone was surprised to see that they were being given a magical theory exam before the first lesson was even taught. Professor Lenore stated that students who did not meet certain standards would be expelled from his class. Since they were all looming students, this level should be the standard. Upon finishing the exam, they must hand in the paper to his assistant, Anna. Contrary to Professor Lenore's intensity, the assistant, Professor Anna, is like a ball of sunshine. The person most affected by this first exam of the day is, without a doubt, Leo. Just by looking at the first question, the boy knew immediately that he was lost. He had no idea about the current trends in magic. The increasingly complex formulas on his exam were simply indecipherable to him as the clock ticked on. Each student did their best to squeeze every last drop out of their brain to answer the intricate questions. As the grains of sand fell to the bottom of the hourglass and tensions rose, their futures as magical heroes depended on this exam. When time ran out, the students discussed how surprisingly easy the exam had been, but none of the best and brightest managed to answer the last question. In comparison to them, Leo was stressed out. He only managed to answer one question, even though he really tried his best. As he, trembling, handed in his exam, He regretted not having learned more about modern magic before coming here, thinking there was no hope. He left immediately, unable to stand the embarrassment of staying in the classroom, thinking it would be best to study magic on his own. In the last 100 years, magic had evolved by leaps and bounds. What once required a perfect understanding of complex concepts could now be used simply by memorizing mind-numbing activation conditions. Professor Ores quickly graded the exams. The guy didn't even need any materials. He did everything with his fingers. Meanwhile, Leo concluded that the development of magic towards memorization had worsened the overall skill level of mages in the present day. After grading the exams, the professor showed off a bit of his magical abilities to his students. He summoned a brilliant orb of light that illuminated the entire lecture hall. With strange runes and other supernatural concepts swimming around it, this is the essence of magic that he himself created from scratch, building this magical algorithm brick by brick. The goal of his class is to train students capable of researching and creating their own magic, which is why he made them take a test on the first day of exploratory classes. There were 49 questions, each worth 1 point, based on simple memorization of increasingly difficult concepts. The final question, worth 51 points, delved into the true essence of magic. Professor Ores hopes that, in the future, his students will become mages capable of solving that final question. Chelsea sighed in relief. Now she could rest easy knowing that no one else had answered the last question correctly. She didn't even know where to begin solving it. She looked up and saw Leo's empty seat, with his test paper placed perfectly on the desk. She thought he had given up, which disappointed her. It would have been great to attend magic classes with him. After the professor's passionate speech, his assistant approached him and urgently whispered something. Anna told him quietly that there was a student who correctly solved question number 50, much to the strict professor's surprise. The stoic and firm Lenores vanished. He almost never laughed in front of the class, but upon hearing such good news, he asked the class which one of them had just made history as the first student to correctly solve question 50 in a single attempt and get a perfect score. Professor Ores was blushing and practically drooling at the thought of molding a once-in-a-generation magical genius, but Anna quickly corrected him, saying the student hadn't gotten a perfect score. That didn't bother him, since he figured the student probably left some questions unanswered because of the time they spent on the final part. Then, Anna dropped the bombshell with another whisper. The student who solved it only answered the final question and left the other 49 untouched. The professor demanded to know the student's name, and Anna handed him Leo's file. Professor Ores called out Leo's name loudly, ordering him to stand up, but it was too late. Not even his friends noticed when he shamefully snuck out of the classroom after turning in his paper. To break the awkward silence in the room, Chelsea carefully raised her hand and explained that Leo had left right after finishing the test. His score was a complete anomaly. Technically, he had gotten the highest score of anyone by only solving the last part and nothing else, the cause of all the commotion. In magic class, he is already in the cafeteria hanging out with Celia. He shared what just happened, and she laughed in his face for failing the exam. Leo got a cute little bird in summoning class and failed magic class. In Celia's opinion, Leo needs to realize he's doing something wrong with his school life. She insisted that he should focus only on his swordsmanship. After all, he is a knight student. When he asked her if she wanted to do some endurance training, she immediately changed the subject. Their friendly conversation was interrupted by a chilling presence rapidly approaching from behind Leo. Professor Ores was furious. He thought this kid, a knight student, had just made a mockery of his class. He confronted Leo for leaving after answering only one question. He asked if the questions were so easy that they weren't worth answering. Leo stood up and respectfully cleared up the misunderstanding, confessing that he truly thought he had no chance of passing that exam. To him, all the questions, except for the last one, were too difficult, and he had no idea where to even start with any of them. He briefly explained that he had studied magic on his own, reading ancient magic books, so he wasn't aware of the modern ones. A thought began to form in the professor's mind. Then he lifted the young man off the ground as if he were a cat or something. When he let him go, Leo had never been so confused in his life. Meanwhile, The professor's eyes were sparkling with joy and possibilities as he urged Leo to follow him. For a moment, Leo didn't even have a chance to refuse or ask where they were going. Professor Ors grabbed him by the collar and dragged him out of the cafeteria like a kid who just found his new favorite toy. Celia was frozen in her seat. It was the first time she had seen the Academy's magic theory professor, and he left a rather eccentric impression. Poor assistant Anna lost track of her boss for a few seconds, failing to make sure Ors didn't do anything weird. The poor woman didn't even have a chance to catch her breath as she tried to keep up with the madman. The professor took Leo to his office. He started writing magic theory problems on the blackboard and asked the young man to solve them. He thought that if the boy hadn't solved the last question by pure luck, he must already have his own magic system established in his mind. Professor Ors stood to the side, waiting for the young man to show him a new magic system through the solutions. But not even 10 seconds passed, and Leo had already finished writing his final answer on the board. Surprised and a little scared, he asked if Leo had mentally solved all the questions he had posed. More or less, that's what Leo did. The professor had stumbled upon a child prodigy after all these years of mediocrity. He finally found a seed worth cultivating to the highest level of heroes. The sorcerer, Professor Satoru, was just outside, minding his own business and walking through the halls, unaware that his peaceful day was about to be disrupted by his enthusiastic colleague, Professor Ors. He ran towards him with a wide, innocent smile and eyes full of life. The sorcerer was not about to tolerate it. He knew that whatever his colleague was smiling about would ruin his perfectly peaceful day, so he turned around and walked back in the direction he came from. Lenores grabbed his leg while thanking him profusely. Professor Alvey had to use magic to keep him away. It's not the first time he's seen Lenores behave this way, but today he's going a little overboard. Professor Ors didn't care at all, even though he was suspended in midair. He just wanted to express his gratitude for discovering the genius that is Leo Plab. Albie was confused. Why would this magic fanatic call a knight in training a magic genius? Hearing him mention knighthood and Leo in the same sentence, Professor Ors got irritated. He insisted that the boy must become a sorcerer at all costs. He wasn't going to stand idly by and allow such a talent to go to waste while wielding metal sticks. Finally, his assistant and part-time babysitter, Anna, caught up to her boss as he was ranting about sending Leo to the Knights. It would be an offense to the field of sorcery. Albie dropped him to the ground. At least the professor was very grateful to Anna for catching him. After running all over campus, the assistant's sunny and rainbow-filled attitude disappeared as she insisted they return to class. Speaking of the devil, Leo walked past the commotion and Professor Albie gave him a reassuring smile. The young man thought that sorcerers haven't changed a bit over time, that they are still lunatics even today. 1 week after the magic theory fiasco, the exploratory classes finally ended. Leo was peacefully on the roof reading his book, away from any drama and exaggerated fuss, as usual. He was researching his own legacy today. The supposed hero of the beginning is widely known as a fraud. Seeing how the world moved on without him, the change in perception still weighed on his mind as he silently contemplated the passage of time on the roof. Meanwhile, the first-year professors were running through the campus hallways without even knocking, and burst into the principal's office with complaints. In Professor Ellen's hands was Leo Plab's application form, which listed as his major the 3 main hero fields: knighthood, sorcery, and summoning. After seeing the boy's untapped potential, the professors were engaged in a war to get him on their side. Moreover, a student taking all the main disciplines was unprecedented in any hero military academy. They thought their students should dedicate themselves to a single discipline. Principal Van just laughed at their arguments, saying that Leo reminded him of that fictional hero from all those great storybooks. Upon hearing the principal, the professors paused their chaotic arguments. Principal Beatty commented that the 5th great hero, also known as the hero of the beginning, Kail, is the only person who has supposedly mastered all classes in history. Meanwhile, Celia and Chelsea are panting from exhaustion as they run around the track. Karen found Leo resting under the shade of a tree and asked him why the girls were training so intensely on a weekend. So, Chelsea asked Leo to train her, and he accepted. That doesn't explain why they were just running in circles. However, Leo simply replied that above all else, even more important than weapons, a hero must possess unlimited stamina. This cardio exercise will allow them that. Even Chelsea has been completely convinced that stamina is the most important aspect for a battle mage. On their break, the girls approached Leo as they were handed water bottles to hydrate them. Surprisingly, Chelsea likes to train her stamina on the weekends and wants to run with Leo. As soon as Celia heard the poor girl say that, she spat out her water as the trauma of training with Leo flashed in her mind. Since he was already planning to run anyway, he could lead them, but Celia has sworn never to run with him again. Noticing their interaction, Kail asked Celia and Leo what was going on between them and why they seemed so close. He even thought they were dating. Celia cleared up the confusion, dropping the bomb that they are nothing more than cousins. Leo is the son of Celia's paternal aunt. The revelation that Leo has Saren blood running through his veins left Kail and Chelsea completely shocked. Leo finally got up and started stretching to join the girls in the next round of hellish cardio. Kail, who wasn't going to waste time training, made his exit. He planned to explore the city of Lumia a bit more. Celia tried to join him in the city, but Leo had already grabbed his cousin by the hair. Today was a training day. Kail couldn't help but think that all the nobles in his circle don't have a shred of dignity. Time passed, and the long-awaited class assignment day finally arrived. Leo walked to his assigned classroom, Class 1A5. Upon entering, he saw Kail sitting and calling for his friend to sit next to him. The cunning businessman was the first to arrive, as he knew which class he would be assigned. Say what you will about Kail, that guy is very good at gathering information. In their class, there was also another familiar face. Chelsea was in her seat. It's hard to tell if she's dead or alive after the hellish weekend of training with Leo. Kail asked what kind of hell Leo had put the girls through, and he replied that they just went over the basics. Suddenly, a couple of low-rank extras peeked into Class 5, also known as the Class of Anguish, and mockingly wondered how many of their poor freshman classmates would be left after the first semester. A lazy voice interrupted their teasing, stating that those two upperclassmen who were mocking the freshmen were far more pathetic in his eyes. The two extras turned around and immediately felt their blood run cold. A man with messy dark hair and an unkempt beard stood before them. His aura was suffocating and overwhelming. He is Herodemon, the professor for Class 15, also known by his nickname, the Wailing Wall. This guy told the extras to form a chair with their bodies, and they did it out of fear. He sat on his human chair and addressed his students, calling them useless deadweights. Class 15 is the class for failures who scored the lowest among the incoming students. Professor Edmund was pretty sure the kids had already heard rumors about him, he asked them. His students, if anyone knew why he chose to assign himself as the advisor for this cursed class. Carr carefully raised his hand and answered that the Wailing Wall must have stepped in to help everyone improve their grades. The professor already knew Carr Thomas by his full name, and his answer was fitting for someone who ranks last in the academy. Professor Edmund changed the question and asked if anyone in this inferior class understood the duty of a student at Lumen Academy. Chelsea bravely raised her hand and answered that their duty is to conquer the world of heroes through practice missions. That was the correct answer, but all the professor could see were the faces of children who would die just minutes after entering the world of heroes. So wouldn't it be better if he just expelled the pathetic bugs who would only slow down their comrades? This is precisely the reason why he took charge of Class 5. It's also the reason he's widely known as the Wailing Wall, as he terrorized his students. Leo stood out as the only one who didn't flinch. The professor silently assessed that this kid would probably be fine if he were thrown into the world of heroes right now. He then ordered everyone to change into their gym clothes and head to the training grounds. Afterwards, since it was the first day of class, it was time for a combat studies class. Class 5 followed his instructions and quickly gathered on the field. While his students were exposed to the scorching sun, the professor set up a large parasol, a beach chair, and even some tasty drinks to relax on the sidelines. It's time to fix the rotten mindsets these kids have developed since entering the prestigious academy. He asked another question, questioning what would save them in the real world, where life is so fragile when the going gets tough. Ella Carbon, a shy student with a rare healing attribute aura, timidly answered that they would be saved by their comrades at their side. That is the wrong answer. Professor Edmund stated that their only salvation is their own ability. Only when they solidify their skills in the face of danger can they even begin to help their comrades. As a follow-up question, he asked if anyone here was confident in their ability to protect their comrades. A cheerful voice, fiery and determined, was heard from the crowd, stating that she was confident in her abilities to explore. To that response, the professor asked the girl to create a fireball to see if she was a proper magic knight. The girl in question was the lively and optimistic Alana Aladdin, a dual-class magic knight after showing her fireball. The professor was not convinced she had what it takes, even insulting its size and intensity, telling her it wasn't enough to even kill an ant. Challenged by the professor's comments, Alana injected even more mana into her spell, creating 2 fireballs while transforming her surroundings into a pool of flames. Not only did the number of fireballs increase, but she also doubled the size of both. Professor Edmund sarcastically called her impressive. While sipping his juice box, he summoned a small wind orb and asked Alana to try. From hitting it with such an amazing fireball, that wind orb ended up becoming a proper spirit, and it flew quickly through the air with a will of its own, flew close to Lana, and mockingly laughed at her fire while tapping her on the nose. The girl, easily provoked, naturally got annoyed. She started throwing fireballs everywhere, desperate to eliminate the annoying wind spirit. After wasting her mana on attacks that couldn't even make contact, the professor intervened. What's the use of increasing the number and size of an attack if you can't even hit the enemy? This exercise is to make his students feel what they're lacking the most, the ability to use their skills effectively in practice. They must hone their skills and surpass their limits. That is the way of the hero. The Wailing Wall smiled and announced that class wouldn't be dismissed until one of them caught his wind spirit, Syl. Leo just listened in silence. The professor's words may be harsh, but he can confirm that all of it is true. Maybe he should give it a try and attempt to catch Syl. While his entire class runs around the field, Professor Edmund's eyes are fixed on Leo amidst all the chatter. He is determined to find out if the boy is just full of fantasies, like the fictional hero Kail. Unfortunately, even with the entire class participating in the hunt, Syl simply runs circles around them. From a distance, Leo emitted his aura, controlling and directing it to focus on his feet. With an insane leap, he launched himself like a scarlet cannon, leaving destruction in his wake, his speed skyrocketing to its limit. His concentration is flawless. Maybe he really is the first true hero to be born from all the classes. Carrie and Chelsea were already exhausted after trying to catch the wind spirit, which was unreasonably fast. Then our boy arrived with his feet and body enveloped in a fiery aura. Using the enhanced concept of aura step, he headed for the skies, the blind spot of the mischievous Syl. With gravity and the momentum from the aura step, he launched himself downward, leaving almost no opportunity for Syl to dodge or get out of the way. His first attempt ended in failure. For a millisecond, it seemed he had missed his first attack, but the smile on his face says otherwise. He subtly manipulated the bursts of aura in his hand, forming a thread that attached to Syl's foot. This effectively held the wind spirit in place to be caught. Unfortunately, none of the Class 5 students caught the stunned Syl. It was captured first by the fast and annoying brat Duran instead. As expected, his speed is truly outstanding, but he only caught Syl thanks to Leo's aura thread that restricted its movements. Despite that, the smug look on the brat's face is still annoying to see. Another person walked onto the field while clapping cheerfully. This pompous-looking man is Eskin, the head professor of Class 1. Right now, he is second in his class's graduation rankings. He took this opportunity to brag about his class's talent, even offering to teach Class 5 a thing or two. Meanwhile, Professor Edmund doesn't even look at the field, as snug as a bug in his chair while sipping his juice box. Then he asked his colleague to have some control of his class for the day, even though Professor Eskin is number 2 in the graduation vote. This laid-back man consistently takes first place every year. The students, especially Carr, are excited to see the showdown between the two pillars of Lumen Academy. These two professors have worked at the academy for over 2 decades. The Uralum professors were apprentices of these two. Hearing their chatter, the adorable Nell Carvin asks Carr how he knew so much about the Academy's affairs. Unfortunately, this guy doesn't have a shred of charm and tends to scare off girls. Professor Escune laughed arrogantly, though he doesn't know what his rival is plotting by taking over the worst freshman class. He's eager to find out, so he called for a competition between classes 1 and 5 for the event. They chose the historic light ball sport called Basta. Professor Edmund got up from his chair and called Escune a genius, shook his friend's hand, and added that learning through practical experience is the best. After accepting the challenge, he collapsed back into his comfy chair and left all the organizing and supervision to Escune. Professor Escune can't understand how he keeps losing the graduation vote to this lazy man, while his students look at him with pity. At least, the Wailing Wall addressed his class once more, saying that this Basta match against Class 1 is a chance for them to practice their skills. And one last thing, he warned them that if they lose, everyone in the class will be expelled. Hearing that, even the students were shocked, since it's their first class with him. Not to mention, their opponent is Class 1, a class with 3 captains. Herod, on his side, doesn't care about their excuses and tells them to try even harder in that case. Leo, furthermore, believes they don't have much to worry about when they have the freshman representative in their class. He instructs Leo to choose 6 candidates for the competition as he contemplates his professor's request. Leo is sure they are testing him for some reason. It doesn't seem to be out of spite. Rather, the kids in his class have lost their spirit after just 1 week of enrollment. With their spirits shattered, Leo thinks that Edok wants to use him as a means to guide the defeated students of Class 5 since they have already lost all hope. The Class 1 professor uses his magic to create the arena, while Leo thinks there must be some way to get out of the Basta competition, a way to help his classmates with their desperate situation. The top brass of Lumen Academy are facing Class 5. Even Chelsea is sweating buckets from fear. She tries to explain the rules of the game Basta because Leo knows nothing about it. The game is a combat sport that has stood the test of time at the Academy. Based on that description, it doesn't sound any more special than a simple ball game. Thomas explains that it's not that simple, that it's actually much more threatening than a simple game. The Sword Princess, Celia, taunts Chelsea for looking pale from defeat. Her taunt ends with Chelsea reacting furiously and refusing to lose, affirming her determination. Leo, on the other hand, is cool as a cucumber and urges them to relax, since they won't lose that easily. Celia is annoyed and wants to show him the results of her training soon. As for Chloe, she's determined to win against the representative of the first years. Regardless of the previous outcome anyway, Escune tells the participants to approach the arena. Leo looks at his classmates to ask who is going to join, and 2 of them step forward. It's Chelsea and Alana. The stakes are high, as losing means expulsion, so they are willing to do whatever it takes to win. Thomas and the others quickly follow suit. While Leo signals to the professor that his class is ready to begin, Escune throws the ball into the air and every participant from both teams sets their eyes on it. The game begins with Duran and Leo reaching for the ball. But the Lightning Boy is a second faster and manages to snatch the ball from Duran. Taking the initiative, the game has just started, and this guy, Leo, he decides that now would be a good time to learn the rules. It turns out the rules are quite simple. All he has to do is infuse the ball with aura, shooting it into the goal without using his body. The first team to reach 11 points will win the game. Duran is on a rampage and throws the ball at a deafening speed, making Leo dodge it at the last second. As for Thomas, he couldn't even see the ball as it zipped past and scored in the net. The first goal has been scored by Duran from Class 1, which has already caused even more despair among the students of Class 5. Now, Tahid is feeling the pressure and thinks they're all going to be expelled at this rate. Now, Leo wants to know how you can get the ball. And basically, there are 3 ways to do it. They can get it if the ball goes out of bounds during the opponent's turn, or if someone can catch it. As Tahid is about to explain the last method, their conversation is interrupted when Alana is brutally knocked down by Celia's explosive throw. The Sword Princess taunts them for talking carelessly when they should be focused on the match. The situation is really bad for Alana, as players cannot directly attack or block opposing players. So the third method is to cause the participant to be unable to continue. The only way to do that is by attacking others with the ball, Leo has had enough and takes control of the ball, believing it's the right time for them to fight back. Alana is knocked out of the game, leaving Class 5 with one less teammate to fight. Both professors are watching the match. Ishun reflects that any team with a fire element advantage usually has an overwhelming advantage in the game. And when it comes to the House of Surger, their flames are the most powerful. He can't understand why Era decided to humor those from Class 5, knowing that the Sword Princess is in Class 1. He thinks there's no way Irod's class can fight back. In response, the lazy professor simply yawns at him, as if he doesn't care about his words. Addressing Shun and Erod, he recalls an old memory of his first student from the House of Surger. That woman is known as the Empress of Basta, a real monster in today's game. Erod is happy to share that his son is playing in the match for Class 5, a piece of information that makes Shun refocus on the game. Class 5 is acting like a bunch of crybabies, selling themselves short and regretting their decision to join the academy. Celia sees Leo unleashing his flames and realizes he's finally getting serious, charging an eternal fireball. He releases the ball at such a monstrous speed that it requires Chloe to use her Caraman Mountain to stop its fury. She acts haughtily, thinking she has successfully deflected his shot, but Leo surprisingly appears next to her, having read her like a book. Leo confidently declares that he will score no matter what. He jumps and hits the ball with his fist, causing Chloe's barrier to tear like paper. Even Eskin is impressed by the boy's impressive battle IQ. Class 5 cheers in support of the freshman's representative. The Class 1 teacher now understands that the real game has just begun. Then, we see a bunch of goals scored, making the score go up to 9-10. Many players were even incapacitated during the match. Finally, the lightning-fast Duran launches his shot, hoping this throw will end the match. But in the end, Thomas sacrifices his body, giving it his all to prevent the ball from scoring. He manages to catch the ball on the verge of mana exhaustion. In the end, Thomas collapses, which leaves both classes on equal footing. However, Class 5 only has Leo, while Class 1 has its 3 captains intact. It seems like a huge disadvantage for his class just in terms of numbers. The Ice Mage Chloe is ready to get her revenge after her crushing defeat in the previous exam. Leo forms numerous copies to further increase his defenses. Leo is about to make his final leap against Celia and Duran. Leo, with his feet braced against the ground, moves at superhuman speed, surprising the 3 captains with how quickly he disappears. Leo performs a lightning step at incredible speed. He might dribble past Celia without her noticing. He has no intention of facing them directly, which means he's aiming for the goal. This leaves everything up to Chloe to defend. She is doing her best to locate the real Leo among his copies. Just analyzing this level of magic leaves her exhausted. As Leo zips past her, Clue collapses in defeat, wondering how a mere human is capable of using elven magic. In the end, not even the 3 captains could stop him. And the conclusive winner of the match is Class 5. Leo's name is chanted as the Class 5 students celebrate with joy. They were so close to being expelled. Eskin is surprised to learn that Erod put them on a death ground just to win the match. The 3 captains, on the other hand, are devastated by the defeat. Eskin realizes he must take care of them and approaches Chloe, asking her if she is frustrated by her defeat. He reminds her that even if they lose, they must always greet their opponents as tradition dictates. He recognizes their efforts in trying to secure the victory for Class 1. Eshoon is truly proud of the students who worked hard and those who cheered for their classmates. His radiant words of encouragement steal their hearts, but Erod isn't as kind or poetic, bluntly calling them losers and teasing them for it. Both classes gave their all in the sport. Class 1 managed to show off their talent, while Class 5 showed perseverance and fought until the very end. Eshoon emphasizes that their ability to push past their limits allowed them to take the victory. He hopes that both rival classes will learn from each other in a sincere rivalry. Tomas shakes hands, but Celia, true to form, pisses off Chelsea, who returns the insults in her own way. Tomas, on the other hand, is overjoyed with his handshake with Duran, who looks at him like a pale ghost. Chloe is on the verge of tears and embarrassment. Leo extends his hand and, praising her for her performance, He believes that with just a little effort and experience, she could become someone of great stature. She takes his words as a taunt at first, but seeing the boy's sincere expression, she changes her mind. Chloe hopes to surpass him one day and shakes his hand. A month has passed since then, as our trio enjoys a meal when Thomas curiously asks about their club selection. Instead of joining a club, Leo is interested in creating one, which makes Thomas completely lose his cool. Chelsea, being his #1 supporter, is ready to join immediately. The club he wants to create will be called the Hero Research Society. It's a strange name, but Leo has the ambition to investigate the forgotten hero, Kail, who is considered a fictional character with no real relevance in history. Thomas thinks no one will join that kind of club, but Chelsea, truly being a unique person, is so ready to join. There's some commotion nearby, which makes Thomas suddenly remember how special today is. Today is the day the 5th-year students, the seniors, mark their return after clearing the dungeon, as fragments of the hero's record are scattered throughout the world, occasionally being responsible for creating dungeons on their own. Hey, these are called hero dungeons. The Academy's seniors clear the hero dungeons and retrieve the fragments. They are supposed to be away for at least 2 weeks and, often, even months. Leo thinks his mother must have gone through similar dungeon raids before. Chelsea sees the 5th-year students and realizes they are the best of the best at the Academy. She introduces the muscular Easterner, Yamoa, the Southern beauty by his side is Toru Han, and finally, the comfortable clothes enthusiast, Exalta. However, it seems one guy is missing. The strongest person in the Academy, the council president, Ri. Tomas is about to explain about him, when suddenly our boy is nowhere to be found. And this was all Celia's doing, who quickly pulled him outside. It turns out that Ri, the council president, has requested a private meeting with our boy. Leo is perplexed and asks why he's being summoned all of a sudden. Celia thinks he's a fool when it comes to anything school-related. She thinks he'll understand when he gets there. So he goes, sits in a spot that seems weird to Celia, and then we see the Sword Princess jumping to hug her brother. Yes, you heard that right. Ray is her brother, and he's excited to meet Leo, who's aiming to be an all-class hero. They share a meal of meatballs together, but for some reason, Celia's nervous because she's never tried them before. She takes a bite and finds herself delighted with the taste. The older brother had been wanting to take her to this restaurant ever since she got here. More importantly, he's intrigued to meet Leo, whose mother used to boast about having a great reputation in the family. He also remembers how Leo's mother was famous during her school years. She was a student who did a lot to achieve a legendary status. For example, she would confidently talk about the desserts they served at the Academy. She once gathered all the students to invade the principal's office. Celia is shocked to learn about her involvement in the famous incident. The brother and sister duo talk cheerfully, while Leo is impressed by Ray. He thinks he's worthy of being called the best of the best at the Academy. It won't be long before this guy is destined to become a hero. Ray thinks it's time to have some fun with dessert, telling them to go outside while he finishes paying. As they're leaving, Ray is surprised to find a strange object in his coat, not knowing why he found it there. The scene cuts to Erad's class, where Alana is dying to ask him a question. This guy straight up calls her question pathetic before even hearing it. Alana wants to know why they haven't chosen a representative for Class 5 yet, since the other classes have already decided. Erad takes the suggestion lightly and casually admits he forgot to pick one. Being the slacker that he is, he literally tells Leo to be the representative. Alana and Tahi have to remind this clown about the democratic selection process. However, they quickly learn why it's better to just keep quiet. Erad wants the chosen class representative to handle all the notes so he doesn't have to work. Through an announcement, the students are told to take the Joint Hero Studies class and are requested to go to the auditorium immediately. Leo asks if they should leave right away, and his suggestion is approved by the teacher. They find themselves in the auditorium, where Leo and Thomas run into an exhausted Chloe. This girl looks like a zombie and is begging to buy some recovery potions from the alchemist. The purchase is made and she receives the only potions he has. Leo thinks that she might be overdoing it when the year is just getting started. Chloe downs the potions and refuses to accept Leo's advice, since she's the top student in magic theory and is extremely anxious about her position. After all, it's only a matter of time until Leo learns modern magic and crushes her in that exam too. Thomas, being a dummy, doesn't get what's wrong with being in second place. Chelsea has to remind this fool about Chloe's position as a mage of the tower. Battle mages never have to worry about falling behind in theory, but for Chloe, it's everything. Research and magical investigation are the heart of the magic tower, so her own pride is on the line here. Chelsea is annoyed and really wonders if the alchemist is a mage at all at this point. Meanwhile, Chloe doesn't seem to be in her best shape. Despite the potions, he notices something at that very moment. Then we see Director Zen observing the strange reaction of the damaged heroes page. Ray has brought the heroes page and claims that it reacted to something, ending up damaged to a certain extent. Something that never should have happened. Yet it did. There wasn't even a relic nearby for this to happen. The director asks if it reacted after the incident and learns that it did not react again. Zen is deep in thought and has decided to focus on this matter on his own. He tells Ray to rest, as he has just returned from the mission. The director asks his assistant Elena to take the damaged heroes page to the auditorium in the Hall of Beginnings. He wants it to be present at the first joint session of the first-year class. We find out that fragments as small as this are capable of reacting if the person mentioned in the hero's record comes into contact with it. In this case, it is Leo, but none of them in the Academy auditorium know it yet. The first-year students are having their first joint class session, and there is too much noise. So the cute Professor Ariane has to ask them to remain silent, but ignoring her warnings, they continue to argue carelessly. Ariane is fed up and unleashes her fury, reminding them with a trembling warning to shut up unless they're looking to die. Her sweet and timid attitude suddenly transforms into a cruel and murderous intent, cursing them for being fools. Ariane is startled when she realizes that everyone has gone silent. She returns to her delicate and shy demeanor, acting as if nothing happened, while the rest of the students sweat buckets. They have simply come to accept that she is scary as hell when she needs to be. Leo has observed her powers and considers her a spiritualist, something extremely rare even in his past life. Ariane starts the class session with a dagger in her hand. She talks about the appearance of the hero's record and what caused the emergence of hero clans in the first place. To open a hero's world, an item that holds sentimental value for that hero is required. Basically, a medium of some sort is why it's much easier for the hero's descendants to open a hero's world without much difficulty. And it's also the reason why the Academy keeps the hero records, treasuring the relationship built between their families. To give a perfect analogy, it's like the relationship between a key and a treasure chest. Leo is impressed with the explanation and is all ears for what comes next. Ariane continues to emphasize the importance of hero studies, which are crucial for discovering clues about the heroes' worlds and increasing their understanding as the students advance in years. They will end up choosing a hero from whom to draw strength and clear their pages, but the professor's explanation is cut short when Elena suddenly appears. She shows them a fragment of the hero records that the fifth-year students recently collected. Upon seeing the mystical object, the students roar with excitement. She opens it a little before quickly closing it. Ariane wants to tell them something before they experience what it's like to see the fragment. She wants to know what their intentions are after becoming heroes. Celia jumps forward and claims she wants to become the strongest knight in her family's lineage. Ariana is impressed by her ambitious goal. Meanwhile, Chloe is interested in writing a spellbook that acts as a record of her original creations. 1. Many students exchange their ambitions as well. 2. Finally, Thomas wants to play a supporting role for the hero candidates. 3. Lastly, Leo stands up to declare his outrageous goal. His goal is to completely destroy Arabos once and for all. 4. This declaration catches the attention of not only the students, but also the teachers. Reina tries to transition smoothly despite being moved by his words. The rest of the students from the other classes are gossiping about his grand goal, believing they're just empty words. As for the teachers, Herod is somewhat bewildered, knowing that Leo doesn't say things without intention. 1,000 years have passed since Arabos was divided into multiple pieces and sealed. However, it has also resurfaced in similar ways in recent years. Even a single fragment is responsible for unleashing a lot of destruction. But this boy just declared the impossible. Ardian doesn't just want to eliminate one piece of the demon, but the entirety of Arabos. Ardian wants to help explore the hero's record. He finally wants to give each class a chance to guess the hero's page before continuing with his explanation on how a hero's world can be cleared. He also advises them in case of unexpected situations, reminding them that the teachers will always be watching them. So they shouldn't mess around, the students are excited and stuttering. Finally, experiencing the joy of touching a hero's record, Raina thinks the right thing to do is to call the representatives of each class to come forward. Celia from Class 1, Leo from Class 5, then Audison from the remaining classes. In reality, 2 fragments were recovered from the dungeon. But for the purpose of the lesson, they will only use 1. The second fragment is quite small in comparison, but it's still there to show them the different forms. The first one is Leo, who proceeds to interact with the fragment, causing the hero's record to open. The hero's name and chapter are hidden, but even the teachers are worried that the record might react violently. Everyone is transported inside the nameless hero's world. Bewildered to discover an environment of chaos and destruction, what greeted them was a mountain of monster corpses scattered everywhere, which can only be assumed to be a battlefield. Trying to get a handle on the unexpected development, Professor Edmund warned them to prepare. As they were now inside a hero's dungeon, Professor Hun, with his quick thinking, found a landmark they could use to understand the situation. A fortress wall, located far from their spawn point. Interestingly, Leo Plab recognized the place from the Age of Catastrophe, the last line of defense for the last city. The walls of Hisland, if his reasoning turns out to be correct and the timeline is right, then Leo is the only one who knows what's going on. From afar, he heard a familiar voice calling him by his old name. Kail, the voice apologized, admitting that its unfulfilled wish had truly been a foolish one. The voice belonged to a woman hailed by modern times as a legend, one of the original heroes and a comrade of Kail, Linus. As foolish as their wish had been back then, she wholeheartedly believed they would eventually save the world, and they did. Seeing a friend who existed thousands of years ago stirred all sorts of emotions within Leo. Facing Linus on this ruined battlefield was beyond his wildest dreams. Her smile lit up the entire hero's dungeon, shattering reality and sending everyone back to the real material world. This swift and strange event was triggered when Leo took the small, unknown fragment of the hero's record, which was only meant for display. China, worried, asked the professors what had happened, but none of them knew what to do. With an exasperated look, Professor Edmund hastily declared that classes were suspended, urging everyone to remain calm and exit the auditorium in an orderly fashion. While everyone left in confusion, Leo remained at the podium, still holding the small, torn piece of paper. Deep in thought, he was sure that what he held was his own page, Kail's page. In his hand, the biggest clue to his mission, a fragment of his own record. Seeing Leo in such deep contemplation fascinated Professor Edmund. Once the commotion died down, the students dispersed to find empty classrooms to hang out in, as the rest of the classes were suspended for the day. In one of the classrooms, Leo explained that they briefly saw the legendary Linus, the Queen of Wisdom. Thinking the Academy had unearthed Linus's hero record, Chelsea's eyes sparkled as she realized this marked a historic event. Alana clenched her fist in frustration, regretting not having fought harder for the class president position. If she had, she wouldn't have missed such a huge opportunity. Carl gave her a look as if she stood no chance in the race. Catching the taunt, Alana rightfully unleashed a shower of blows on the poor guy. Hearing the commotion, Professor Edmund entered the room to scold them for being so loud, giving them a choice between independent study or expulsion. With his eccentric behavior, it's hard to tell if he was joking or not. When the professor left the room, the students didn't dare cause another uproar just in case. Deep in thought, Leo wondered why his hero's record had been reduced to a total mess compared to other records. It was in such a state that even he had a hard time recognizing whose world it was supposed to be. The opening message also concealed the world's name and the record's chapter. It was almost as if someone had intentionally destroyed his record to erase his legacy. Given that hero records are relics from the past that make it possible to inherit a hero's power, sabotaging one indicates that someone doesn't want to see the birth of a new hero. The only viable suspect with the motive and the means is none other than Arabos. Even though it's in pieces, its power is limitless. This incident ignited a spark in Leo to investigate why his hero's record had been reduced to such a state. After the fiasco with the hero's record, a whole month of school life passed without incident. Now let's focus on the magic department's class. And the completely elegant professor house is explaining the contents of their midterm practical exam. The first-year students are tasked with creating their own original magic. At the mention of unique magic, fear gripped the hearts of the young mages. Original magic is a type of magic that distinctively showcases the individuality, creativity, and power of a mage in the current era, where activation techniques have become commonplace. Mages rarely strive to create their own spells. However, original magic can become someone's secret technique to be used in critical situations. This has its origins in the star magic that every elf learns. In fact, star magic is a small copy of original magic. There has only been one person in history who has mastered the true and complete power of star magic: the creator of star magic, the founder of Nebula, and one of the founding heroes, Luna. Hearing the professor emphasize the importance of the midterm exams, Chloe focused. Sitting next to her, Leo couldn't help but notice a strange book on her desk. Just being near the book gave him chills. It emitted a strangely dark and familiar feeling. Seeing Leo show interest in her book, Chloe quickly hid it in her bag. If he wasn't mistaken, that was a grimoire. Just then, Professor Horst dismissed the class and wished them luck with formulating their own spells as the first-year students began to slowly file out of the classroom. Leo ran after Chloe and took her hand. Surprised, she looked at him indignantly. Leo smiled and invited her to have lunch together, of course, with ulterior motives. He had seen how suspicious she got when she hid that grimoire and wanted to know more. Chloe, pulling her hand away forcefully, rejected his invitation, saying she didn't have time for such nonsense. Her mind was preoccupied with the thought of beating Leo in the upcoming practical exam, but just in time to diffuse the tension in the air, Karen intervened with her lively energy, calling Leo a troublemaker for daring to challenge the Ice Queen's top spot in magic studies. Chloe was still coming to terms with her defeat against Leo in terms of techniques. However, when it comes to pure magic, she refuses to let anyone surpass her. With clenched fists and a firm determination, she swore to win the midterm exams no matter what it took. Leo knew that if he backed down or took it easy, it would be disrespectful to Chloe's convictions. So, like a true sportsman, Leo offered his hand and gracefully accepted the challenge. Promising to prepare well, Chloe shook his hand with a blank look in her eyes. He had never seen anyone as determined as the Ice Queen. The fool Tomas was watching from the sidelines, absolutely amazed by his friend's natural technique to trick a girl into holding hands. Before sunset, Leo found himself at the huge monolithic Tower of Heroes. He had been told that somewhere in this gigantic place was the forbidden library of Lumen Academy. If he managed to get in there, he might find some clues about the mystery of his lost hero record. As he climbed the stairs, some upperclassmen were charmed by his aura. Halfway to the top, someone called him by his full name. It was a female upperclassman with brown skin. With curly hair and big round glasses, I dare say she was an absolutely stunning girl. Blowing a bubble with her gum, she claimed she had been hearing a lot about Professor Lenore's young prodigy. This stunning girl was Tuba Ann, a fifth-year student from UM's magic department. Leo gave a polite bow and extended his greetings. Not thinking much of the interaction with the upperclassmen, he tried to continue on his way up, but Tuba stretched out her long legs, stopping him to ask what business a first-year student could possibly have in the Tower of Heroes. Leo answered truthfully that he was simply there to meet the student council president. Seeing his confidence, Tuba's interest was piqued. She insisted that if he joined the magic department exclusively, he would have many opportunities related to the tower. She was quite insistent, even though Leo was already taking classes in the magic department. Finally, Tuba stopped messing with him and moved her leg. Leo continued on his way and thanked her for understanding. With a hint of a threat, she reiterated her wish for Leo to declare magic as his main focus. Before the semester ends, she made it clear, and it was up to the boy how to interpret her words. Leo replied with his perfectly polite smile, and once he reached the top of the stairs, he ran into some upperclassmen heading even higher in an elevator. He joined them inside and pressed the button for the 9th floor. To his embarrassment, the button refused to activate no matter how many times he pressed it. He kept on pressing, and the faulty elevator continued to test his patience. Leo would have been stuck on that floor if not for a friendly voice that explained the buttons only activate when you channel mana into them. The male voice belonged to another upperclassman who recognized Leo. This voice sounded a bit more cheerful and polite than Tuba's. This kind-looking man was Lee Samu, another 5th-year student from the Knights department. He showed him a bright, toothy smile, living up to the rumor that he was the top class representative. Once again, Leo gave a polite bow to his senior and returned the greeting. Just like Tuba, Lee asked him what brought him to the Tower of Heroes. Upon telling him he had some business to discuss with the student council president, he showed interest. It's rare to find a first-year student in the entire academy who isn't afraid of him, let alone someone bold enough to waltz right into the student council president's office. Impressed by his solid mental fortitude, Lee proposed that Leo should seriously consider joining the Knights department as his main affiliation. Tired of having the same conversation over and over again, Leo just gave a dry laugh. Finally, after several interruptions that wore him out before the main event even began, Leo arrived at his destination. He knocked on the door, introduced himself, and asked President Ray if he could come in. A warm and welcoming voice from the other side of the door invited him in without any issue. It seems President Ray is neck-deep in paperwork, even though it's almost nightfall, but he welcomes him with a smile. Not wanting to waste any more of his time, Leo got straight to the point and asked for access to the Academy's forbidden library. Upon hearing such a request, Ress's mood turned more serious. He knew Leo wasn't the type to joke around, so he gladly explained the gravity of this petition. You see, there are only 2 ways a common student can access the sacred forbidden library. The first and most direct way is to conquer a hero's dungeon, which is easier said than done. After successfully completing a dungeon raid, it's customary for the conqueror to personally return the obtained pages to the hero's record stored in said library. He knew Leo was far from gaining access through that method, so he asked for the second option. President Rez leaned forward and, with a sly smile, he promised to reveal the secret of this second method once Leo finally joined the student council. A few days after being cornered by the senior students and the student council president, the day of the night department's practical exam arrived. For the first day of this monumental practical exam, which would be held at the Academy's outdoor stadium, many people, both students and teachers, came to watch. Of course, being the natural entrepreneur he is, Carr was there with a popcorn cart to sell his goods to the crowd. His sales pitch was quite direct. You can't watch the upcoming matches without some popcorn, right? Seeing her friend pulling out all the stops, Chelsea didn't know whether to be impressed or embarrassed. Alana, on the other hand, felt that Carr would already be rich if he wasn't trapped in a manhwa. Leo lined up with his fellow first years from the night department and scanned the audience. As expected, Chloe hadn't come to watch. Professor Al was on the field, staring sternly at his students to instill in them the seriousness of the upcoming evaluation. Without further ado, he called the first pair who would face off in the opening match. The first was Jalesna from Class 1, a young man with a cunning look and an untrustworthy smile. His opponent was none other than our boy, Leo PLV from Class 5. The combatants took the stage, rousing the entire arena in the stands. Carr was busy looking for more customers, and his eyes landed on Professor Skin. He cheerfully ran towards the grumpy professor, eager to make some more money, samples in hand, and asked if he'd like to buy a popcorn and drink combo to go with the match that was about to start. Being the snob that he is, Skin gestured as if the idea of eating popcorn was beneath him. He believed that only fools like Professor Edmund Darlin would buy such a thing. Sensing he wasn't going to break the professor that easily, he looked towards Class 1 for help. Fortunately, Celia was there. A single glance was enough for her to understand what Carr needed. Using her secret technique, she turned her childish charm up to the max and asked the professor if he was going to buy delicious popcorn for the whole class. With the trap already set, the only thing left to do was for Carr to get the rest of the class to cheer for their professor's generosity. Seeing the students shout his name with such fervor, Professor Skeen's defenses slowly crumbled. He may be a snob, but he's also a hardworking professor who just wants the affection of his students. The great professor gave in and asked Carr to give his students a popcorn and drink combo, but strictly limiting it to one per person. While Carr took advantage of his booming business, the fighters for the opening match took their starting positions. With a confident smile, bordering on arrogance, Leo told his opponent he was lucky to be the first victim. Jalesna could feel that the first-year representative didn't see him as a real opponent at all. He was determined to make him regret that. This snake boy, Jalesna, comes from the heroic family of the Esnak line. Before the first round officially began, let's hear the basic structure of the evaluation from our beloved popcorn seller. You see, the practical midterm exams for the night department consist of a simple series of duels. Those who achieve 5 victories in the matches will receive a passing grade. An air of uncertainty filled the stands. Even though everyone knew that Leo was the first-year representative, only a handful of them had seen him in action. Since Leo is also studying in 3 departments, they believe there should be a difference compared to those who only focus on one, not to mention that Hall is 3rd best in Class 1, behind the absolute monsters Ella and Duran. His weapon of choice is the spear, and his aura has a sharp and toxic form. Wielding his spear with impressive precision, Hall demonstrated his skill. In his mind, he only knew Leo as the arrogant guy who always hangs around Celia. Professor Aldio gave the final reminder that whoever makes their opponent unable to fight back will claim victory, and to treat this practice match as if it were a real battle. As soon as the start signal was given, Leo was surprised to feel a dark aura he hadn't felt in a long time. Surprisingly, that dark aura wasn't coming from the enemy in front of him, but from the direction of the Lumen campus. Instead, the dark and slithery energy lingered in his mind, foreshadowing a deadly premonition. Unbeknownst to Leo, this disturbing aura originated from the library, where Chloe was immersed in countless magic books in preparation for the magic department's midterm exam.